This is Bars Loaded with Ben and Nick,
a strength, powerlifting and performance podcast
where we hope to share our opinions, help educate and inspire,
tell a few stories, build a community along the way, and
Bars Loaded. 3, 2, 1. Bars Loaded.
Let's rock and roll.
As always, super underprepared, super sweaty, and over caffeinated.
Don't know what you're talking about.
Not just Monday nights.
Yeah, all the time. Just like my life.
Just in general, from birth. Yeah. So we've got this really fancy coffee machine that makes really nice coffee because both Em and I are big fans of caffeine, of the coffee variety in particular.
Same.
And Em's got this like new thing now where after every time you make a coffee, you have to clean the coffee machine. And I'm really bad at doing that. It's like I'll just make a coffee and just walk away.
Nice. And
then she'll just like bust into my office and be like, "Babe, you didn't clean the coffee machine again." I'm like, "Oh no, I'm going to make another one soon." So I left it. Because I was having an absurd amount of coffee like a week ago.
How much is an absurd amount?
I was averaging like 7 to 10 cups of long blacks a day.
So this was full today.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Because it's so hot, I was like, I'm going to make like a liter of cold brew. And nice. The very small amount left in here is all I have left from
That's it.
Said nice. Liter. And that wasn't my only coffee either.
I had hot coffees too.
Well, I had a double espresso when I trained, so yeah.
Nice. Yeah, so there was like this ongoing battle for a couple of weeks of me not cleaning the coffee machine and then Em trying to force me to clean the coffee machine after every time I made a coffee. And then she actually said to me this week, "If you're not going to clean the coffee machine after you make it, I'm banning you from making coffees."
Does that mean she's just going to make coffee for you?
Well, that's what I suggested, and it didn't go down very well.
Yeah, I don't think it would have.
No, trust me, it didn't. So now what's happened is today I got in trouble this morning for making a coffee when I got home from the gym and not cleaning the coffee machine. So then I was kind of like a little bit gun shy to make any more coffees for the rest of the day. It's like, I don't really want to get in trouble again. And I know like it's all well and good to say I'll clean it, but I know I'll forget. So I just kind of didn't. And, you know, like the Super Bowl was on, so I was doing that and I was doing my programming at the same time. And to be honest, like I just didn't make any coffees. So I had 2 coffees this morning when I got home from the gym, one before. That's the only coffee I've had all day, except for the one that I have right now. And before this podcast, I had the biggest migraine. And I was like, "Oh, Em, I've got a massive headache. I'm going to have to take Panadol, I think." And she's like, "Well, you haven't had much coffee today. Maybe you have caffeine withdrawals." I was like, "Well, I've had 4. Like, do you really think I'd be having withdrawals off 4? And she's like, "Probably." So before the podcast, I actually made a long black, sculled it, made another one, which is the one that I have here. And guess what? I have 0 headache.
You're a fiend.
No headache. I'm addicted to caffeine and I'm not ashamed to say it.
Well, I was having this conversation with one of the guys at the gym the other day, and he was like, yeah, like, you know, if you're having a double espresso, you know, like it's either meaning that you got a hard session or you've got legs. So I'm like, well, yeah, I'm like that, or I'm just, you know, a caffeine addict. He's like, well, yeah, that's that. So I said, well, you know, at the end of the day, it was, you know, it's either caffeine or meth, and
caffeine's healthier.
Yeah.
And by all reports, it probably tastes better too.
I mean, from experience, like, no, I'm kidding.
I don't know what meth tastes like, but I'm assuming it would taste like really chemical.
Well, I mean, how many meth heads do you see who have just like fucked up teeth?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
If they're smoking it and that's what it's doing to their teeth, I don't think I want that.
No.
Like, I'll stick to my coffee, thank you.
It doesn't scream flavor to me.
Well, from what I hear, when you get like the see-through crystals, that's like the plain flavored one. If you get like the brown one, that's like the chocolate flavored meth.
Oh, dude, that's so gross.
Yeah.
That's so gross. Meth is
or
so disgusting.
or the brown meth is the one that someone smuggled into prison, and it's just stank shit.
The extra brown meth.
Yeah.
That's probably the one with the most flavor.
Yeah, but that's when you know they've really methed up.
Oh, cue meth jokes. That's good. So we're now YouTube video stars.
Apparently so, yeah. It's exciting.
Yeah, we've got two up on YouTube.
How much did you enjoy that process?
Minus 10,000.
I remember when you were sending me the message, it's been like, dude, it's so slow. It's taking forever. This is giving me the shits. And then it's got to like buffer up to like 4K or some shit afterward. And you're like, dude, fuck.
Yeah. Yeah. But it was worse than what I even told you. I didn't tell you the first part of it because I wasn't like super frustrated at that part, because it was like, you know, when something takes a lot longer than you're expecting, that it's like halfway through the process that you start to get really frustrated.
Yeah.
It's like the first part, you're like, oh, this has taken a little bit longer than I expected. I didn't expect this. And you kind of like talk your way through it, and I'm a calm fella. I can get through this. It's all right. It's just a minor setback. And then it's like, wait, I have to wait again. Oh my God, I'm still waiting. And the frustration just slowly builds.
Good.
So that happened, and I didn't message you until like 3/4 of the way through. So what originally happened was, so you know how we record these through the program that we record them through?
Yeah.
That records these videos into like the program on the internet in very high quality, but it doesn't actually download them until you ask it to.
Okay.
So I clicked on the video and I pressed, yep, this is where I want it to start. This is where I want it to end. And then I clicked, all of the high resolution video things, the noise things to make it as even as possible sound wise. And then I pressed, export. And I was expecting it to go fairly quick because the reels that I make take about 5 minutes to export per reel, right? And then once it's exported, that means it's ready to then download to your computer. And then the downloading of the reels takes about 15 seconds and it's on my computer. Then I can send it to the phone and Bob's your uncle. So the exporting process for the first entire podcast video from start to finish, the exporting process took 45 minutes. And I was like, oh, dude, this is going to be a lengthy process. I wasn't expecting this. But that was okay because I was building the YouTube channel at the same time while I was waiting for that to happen. Then it was ready to download. I was like, sweet. Press download. It then took an hour and a half to download from the program to my computer. And I was like, ooh, that's double the length. That's not cool.
No.
Right? So at this point, I'm like 2 hours and 15 minutes in, and as far as I've got is the video is on my computer.
Good.
And I was like, all right, cool. I guess this is going to be a really long day. But I'm committed now. So then it was ready to upload to YouTube. So I pressed upload video, went through the process that you go through to upload it onto YouTube. And then I clicked all the boxes, did all the things, pressed upload. It says uploading video. It'll be public in 3 hours or something. I was like, dude, that's 5 hours to get one video up. And it didn't end up taking 3 hours. I think it took 2.5. And then once the 2.5 hours, once it was uploaded, and then that's when I got the message that was like, your video is now uploaded, but we have to buffer it up to 4K. You have 5 hours remaining. It's like, dude, that's 11 hours to get the video from this program onto YouTube.
Fuck.
Yeah, I know. It was a process, man. I did 2 of them in that day, so.
That's fucking bonkers, man.
Yeah, I know. So when I was sending you those messages of frustration, it wasn't just like, Ben, I'm so angry this took 45 minutes. It took fucking 11 hours.
Oh, chaos.
Yeah, it was nuts. But they're up. So, and in the process of putting them up, I actually fucked up the second one and didn't make it like little squares. Like we're in little separate squares, but that's okay. I won't fuck it up this week. It's a learning process. Give me a couple more weeks.
You're doing a fuckload better than I would be if I was in charge of this shit, man. Like, I'll tell you that much right now.
A couple more weeks, Spotify will be knocking on the door. We'll be replacing Joe Rogan. It'll be all good.
You mean again?
Again, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they asked us last week, but I said we need a bit more practice.
Well, I mean, like, because when they reached out and they were like, oh, like, can you guys run like a masterclass on Joe's show and show everyone how it's done? Like, we obviously had to say no to that. We're just, we're not ready to give out like our, our secret sauce right now.
Mm.
But yeah.
And plus we respect him too much, I don't want to embarrass the guy. Like, I look up to him.
Yeah. He's been doing this long enough now that, like, fuck.
He should
fuck
know.
with tickets. Fuck with tickets.
We're massive dickheads. That's
legitimately
right.
Though, like, that would be like
the spotters and lows know that though. I feel like it makes us endearing, to be honest. Like, everyone loves a good dickhead.
I heard a really fucking good joke today.
Okay, go.
How many wrinkles does a dickhead have?
I don't know.
Shrug your eyebrows and I'll tell you. I'm like, yes.
Oh, look, I have heaps. When I was younger, I never had those.
Dude, I've had them since I was like fucking 18. It's fantastic.
I'm getting so old.
I'm all for it.
Oh my dog just came into my office.
Cameo appearance.
It's so frustrating. Yeah, Bundy.
Show the people what they want to see. By the people, I mean me.
I'm supposed to be looking after the dogs, and they're now both in my office, and the door is now open.
This is just payback for you not cleaning out the coffee machine.
Exactly. Yeah. Bundy, out. Bundy.
He's like, but Dad, I want to be famous.
Bundy doesn't listen to me.
What?
Bundy doesn't listen to me.
He only smart ass.
He only listens to Em. He literally just looks at me and says, "No."
He's like, "Not today, Satan."
Yeah, I guess if you can hear background noise, it's just Em cooking. I guess that's just how we're gonna roll today.
I can't hear anything, man.
Today's been fantastic, hasn't it? What a good start.
I think you were ready to like fucking throw your computer at the wall.
Did you see me throw my headphones at the ground?
Yeah, I did. I'm like, he's fiery tonight.
Is that the first time you've seen me have a tantrum?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Well, funny story. I almost had an incident of road rage this morning.
Oh, tell me more.
Yeah, I haven't told you this yet. This was at about 4:15 this morning.
Yep.
On the way to the gym.
Mm-hmm.
So I live on a really long straight street, but about 200 meters up. So it's a long straight hill.
Mm-hmm.
And about 200 meters up the hill from my house, it kind of dips and then goes back up the hill. So there's like a 50-meter spot at the bottom of the hill where you can't see if there's any cars coming because they go like under the road line and then back up and over. Mm-hmm. But it's like 200 meters up the hill from my house. So it's a ways away enough that if there's a car in there, I can still reverse out of my driveway and drive away very easily before they even get anywhere close to my car.
Yeah.
unless they're going just way, way, way too fast, which does happen. But I reversed out of my driveway this morning. I looked, no cars. Reversed out of my driveway, and as I'm on the road, so I'm like all the way out of my driveway on the road, about to put it into drive to start going. This car just zooms past me, zooms onto the other side of the road to go around me to get in front of me and keep going down the street. And about 3 houses down is the bottom of the hill where there's a stop sign. So like they're not zooming far. They're just 3 more houses, stop sign. Then it's a T intersection. You've got to you got to stop anyway, right?
Yeah.
That pissed me off hard because I was like, I didn't even see this guy until he was literally in front of me, and it scared the crap out of me because I was like, holy crap, like what was that? I thought I nearly ran into him. So then I just got on my horn and just was like, and didn't get off the horn all the way until the stop sign, which I'm sure my neighbors loved at 4:15 in the morning.
I'm sure they did as well.
Thinking back probably wasn't the smartest thing to do. Heat of the moment, right?
Yeah.
And then he stopped at the stop sign. I pulled up behind him. He turned left. I turned left. And then you kind of go another 500 meters down this road and it comes to traffic lights. We both stopped at the traffic lights. We were both turning left. I was behind him. And then the traffic light went green. He turned left. I turned left. He pulled into the left lane. I pulled into the right lane. He put his hand out the window and waved me forward. So I was like, okay, let's just have a discussion about this. Let's just have a friendly discussion about why you're a fucking idiot and nearly rammed me off the road. So I pulled up next to him. Em's freaking out. I said, put your window down, because his window was down. He was hanging half out the window. And then she was just like, no. I was like, put your window down. I want to talk to him. So she put her window down. And he was like, you got a fucking problem, mate? And I was like, yeah, I fucking do. It's you. And like I was into him. And then I don't have the best eyesight. So I'm like squinting because I don't wear my glasses when I go to the gym. I'm like squinting out. I'm like, it's pitch black. It's 4:15 in the morning. Like, wait a second, I know this guy. And he's like, pull over then. This big Islander guy. And I'm like, Mark, is that you? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, hey, dude, it's Nick. And he's like, oh, sorry, man. Sorry, man. Sorry, bro. And I'm like, all good, dude. Sorry, man. He's like, sorry, bro. All good. And then we just put our windows up and kept driving.
Classic.
I literally played football with this guy's brother from like under 12s, under 13s, all the way up until we were like 18 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah, super funny story.
It's good times.
Yeah, it could have been a lot worse.
It could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, it could have been a lot worse. But at the same time, like I also don't think that I was wrong. And I had no intention of getting out of the car. But also just like when people do dumb shit like that, it really fires me up because I'm like, this is where I live and there's a ton of kids in our neighborhood. Just don't drive like an idiot.
Yeah, it's not rocket surgery.
Yeah, rocket surgery.
Yeah.
Okay.
Never heard that one before, have you?
Never heard that one.
Well, it's like, instead of saying like it's not rocket science,
yeah,
it's like it's not rocket surgery.
Brain surgery?
Well, it's like rocket science brain surgery.
It's definitely not rocket surgery. In fact, I'm not even sure that's a thing. I don't think anything's rocket surgery. Not even rocket surgery. They probably just call it maintenance.
That's rocket surgery.
Yeah.
This is what happens when I have a liter of cold brew.
That saying is so fucking stupid.
That's the point.
Because rocket science is really hard and done by scientists.
Yep.
Rocket surgery is maintenance and is just done by fucking mechanics. Like
I reckon
dude, my brother-in-law could do that.
I reckon you'd have to be a little bit more than a fucking mechanic to do fucking maintenance on a rocket.
A rocket mechanic. That's like one step up from a heavy diesel mechanic.
No, it's not.
For sure.
Nah. I've got
You
like I
know?
got a mate of mine. No, I got a mate of mine who's like an aerospace engineer, and he's like so he's he used to be like an active fighter pilot in the US Air Force, and he's like the maintenance is required on like rockets, jets, and all that sort of stuff. He's like it's insane.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's just turning bolts, right?
Exactly. It's like boop, boop. It's like it's what we did at the start. It's like turn it off, turn it back on again. Like if it doesn't fix it, like fucking throw it in the bin.
It's exactly what we did 3 times to be exact. Oh, that didn't work? Let's just try turning it off and on again.
Computer
Again.
surgery.
Yeah.
We did computer surgery.
Well, you know, we're computer scientists now.
Definitely me. Definitely me.
Definitely me. How's your week been, man? How was your weekend?
It was good. I had work on Saturday morning. Had a very interesting interaction in a gym. That was fun. So pretty much, I've got an old client who was like, "Can I do like 4 weeks of coaching with you just to get like some injury shit sorted?" And I'm like, "Yeah, like you're an old client, so like I'll help you out for a little bit." And she was like, "Oh, you know, whenever we do the stuff at your gym, like it's all well and good, but she's like, I go to my gym and all the equipment's so different that I don't really know what I'm doing or anything like that." She's like, "Would you come and like train me here?" I'm like, you would have to ask your gym first, and obviously just let them know that like it's not like a PT session as such. It would just be to show you the mechanics of the machines specific to your rehab stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So she's like, "Yep, I got approval. That's all good. They're happy for you to come in. But like you can only pretty much come in once." So I was like, "Yep, that's fine. No worries." We get there, we check in, all that sort of stuff. We go upstairs. We're in the gym. We're probably, I don't know, like 2/3 through the session. And this guy comes up to me. He's like, "Hey, mate, who are you?" And I'm like, "Hey, mate, I'm Ben. Who are you?" Just like kind of being a little bit of a smart ass.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "Oh, like, you know, my name's Will. Like, I'm one of the PTs here. I was just wondering, like, what you're doing." And I'm like, "Oh, like, I'm here with my client. You know, we had it cleared that it was fine for me to come in and just show her some stuff, like specific to the machines that you guys have here. Like, apparently it was all cleared. It was all fine." And he's like, "Oh, but like, is it like a PT session?" I'm like, "Yeah, but like, no." And he goes, "Oh, well, because, you know, if you're like not a PT here, you can't be doing PT sessions." I'm like, "Look, I understand that. Like, my client had spoken to your PT manager, cleared it. We've been told it's okay." And he goes, "Well, that shouldn't be the case because we don't allow that." And then like my client arcs up and was like, "No, no, no, no. Like, I've had it cleared, right. Like, it got it." Like, she came in pretty hot, but I'm like, just breathe. Like, it doesn't need to be an issue. So then he's like, "Yep, no worries." He comes over about 2 or 3 minutes later, takes her details down. It was like, "Who did you speak to? When did you speak to them? What's your name?" Like, got her phone number, email, all that sort of shit. Like, you could just tell he's being a bit of a dick about it.
Yeah.
And then she's like, "Well, we've been cleared, so it's fine." And pretty much like turned her back on him. And I was like, "All right." And then about 5 minutes after that, we had like the PT team leader walk over to us. And she's like, "Hey guys, how are we today?" I'm like, "Yep." I'm like, "We're really good, thanks. How are you?" She's like, "I'm just like, obviously, like I've been kind of like told like that you guys are like doing a PT session, but you're not a PT here. I'm just wanting to like get some clarification on, you know, what's going on here because we don't allow outside PTs to do PTs here." I said, "Look, I completely understand that. Like, you know, I've been in the industry long enough that I understand that you guys have your own PTs, and to have someone externally coming in, it would be like a conflict for you guys." And I'm like, "I understand that. It's not what this is for." I said, "Look, I do a bit of online work with my client here. And for like part of her rehab stuff, like we're just going through specific to the machines that you have here for the outcomes that we need. I'm like, this isn't a personal training session. And I kind of like told a bit of a white lie. I'm like, it's not a paid session. We're just going through some stuff together so that she can get like out of pain. And she's like, oh, she's like, that's fine. She's like, we allow Allied Health to come in and do like a free session with a client if their clients train here. I'm like, amazing. Like, that's fantastic. And she's like, so what sort of Allied Health are you? And do I kind of lie or do I just like tell the truth a bit? So I was like, I'm going to do a bit of both. So I said, I'm like, look, I specialize in like post rehab strength and conditioning, but I'm also like a massage therapist, which isn't a lie, but just kind of like made it sound a bit fancy. She's like, oh, that's fantastic. Like, whereabouts are you based? How long have you been doing it for? Got chatting to her, like just pretty much like buttered her up. And then my client like starts like chiming in. I'm like, shut the fuck up. Like, it's fine. And then like I look back to the team and I'm like, look, thank you so much for having us today. Like I apologize for the miscommunication a little bit earlier on. Like obviously like this was like a one-off. So, like you won't see me again, but like I appreciate you like having me and like being really understanding about this whole situation. And then like went up to the original PT that came over and spoke to us. I was like, hey mate, like apologies for the misunderstanding a little bit earlier today. But I appreciate your patience having us in here. Shook his hand, walked out. And we're walking out, my clients are like, oh, they were so rude. I'm like, no. I'm like, they're just doing their job. So that was...
Yeah, that is interesting. Good on that guy for coming up and talking to you. That was a PT.
Yeah, fucking right.
Because that's like, obviously that's something that happens a lot.
Well, it was like a full health
gyms.
club. Yeah, it was like one of those like big community gyms that has like the pool, the daycare, like the whole fucking like the basketball court. Like it was like a rec center sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it happens so much in big box gyms, and being someone that's managed them for a long, long time.
Yeah.
One of the things that I hated the most was when PTs would come into my office and be like, oh, there's this guy out on the gym floor training someone. I'm like, well, tell him to stop. Like, it's your gym. You're the PT. Like, that's your space. You do need me to come and tell people to stop doing that. Like, you could just go up and just be like, hey, man, what are you up to? Like, I'm a PT here. I pay to use this space. I don't really appreciate you just doing it for free when you don't actually work here.
Yeah.
Like, you can't do that. But they were always like, oh, no, I don't want to. So I had to go do it. So it's cool that he actually did. That's kind of cool.
Yeah. And like, my thing is like, that was the one thing I was like, so because when I said to the client, I was like, I'm like, you need to make sure that it's okay for me to come in. Because I'm like, I don't want to step on any toes. Like, as well as I was kind of looking and going, I feel like they're going to say no. And when she was like, oh, no, they're fine with it. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, because it is. Yeah, that's pretty rare that you would even be allowed to do that. That's cool that you got to do it, though.
Well, I think she may have lied. Like just quietly. Because like when I got there, she's like, yeah, this is my friend. I'm like, not really, but like, all right. But yeah,
that makes more sense.
Yeah, so that was a bit interesting. And then I went to the gym and trained after that. Had like a pretty good session. I have the most horrendous DOMs from that session though. Holy shit.
Yeah, still.
Yeah, like I woke up this morning. I'm like, my abs. I'm like, I can't like actually like sit up out of bed. I had to like roll into my side and like push myself up.
What did you do with your abs in that session?
So they're kind of like a leg raise, but the whole idea is like you lie on the ground, you hold onto the pole, you bring the legs up towards the pole, hips off the ground, and then you can try and get like the line from your feet to your shoulders in as straight a line as you can, and then do like a full lever on the way down.
Yeah,
and like, I haven't done those in years, and I thought they were a lot better than what they actually looked like. But I mean, that's obviously one of the fun parts about relearning a movement and why you film shit.
Yeah, they're hard.
And then like yesterday, I woke up. I'm like, I'm pretty sore. Like went on a massive walk yesterday around a lake. And then like I woke up this morning. Like I got home last night. I was like, I'm getting a little bit tender. And I woke up this morning. I'm like, oh fuck,
really tender,
really fucking tender. And like my glutes and adductors. I'm just like, my god, I haven't been this sore in a long time, unless I've like hurt myself.
Yeah, but like not like a good sore, like a DOM sore, not an injury sore. Yeah. Do you want to take a moment to vent about your bench today?
Oh man, like yeah, I do.
Let's
So,
do it. Do it.
like, I was warming up, and you know how those days when you're like, yeah, like I'm not quite feeling it, so you kind of really go with the expectation, and then like you spend a bit of extra time like making sure that you've ticked all your boxes, and then you're like, oh, I've got a heavy set today, so I'll be sensible and I'll actually set my face savers to like the correct height. Which, like for me, like obviously, like my range of motion's not huge on my bench, but if I set them properly, it's like if I lose position, like I can clip them really easy, and that's what fucking happened to me today.
Yeah.
So like I've unracked my tops and I was just like, oh, I'm like, I did my first rep, and as soon as I did that first rep, I'm like, I'm like, daddy's fucking home. And I was so ready. I did like my first rep, came off the chest so easily. I did my second rep. I'm like, I'm gonna fucking shit this in. And then as I've come down on that third rep, I've just gone like dunk, and it just kicked me off. I'm like, I'm not gonna try and fight that, recover it, and try and get it back up and recover. I'm like, fuck it. I'll come back down to the face savers because I've got them set for a reason. Um, you know, put the bar back up to where it needs to be. Sort of, I was like, all right, I'll give myself a couple of minutes to sort of like collect myself, shake that shit off, and then I'll lower the face savers down to the height they're usually on, which is probably not the most useful height. And then I'll just, I'll go and I'll see if I can find that same groove. And like to be fair, like the second set still didn't move bad, but like rep 3 was like, you do not have another rep here.
Yeah, that was the end of the set for sure.
Yeah. But again, like looking at it, again, like sort of zooming out a little bit, I'm like, well, my objective was 4 reps and I end up with 5. So I'm like, it's not the end of the world. It just wasn't all in the one set like I kind of wanted it to be. But I think I had the strength for it. I think I just was a little bit taxed after that first
I
round.
think so too. I think that was probably just like an RPE 7 with a misgroove, to be honest.
At least.
Yeah.
I'd probably go about a 6.5 with a misgroove.
Like, I definitely think you probably could have hit that for 10. Like, if you just really wanted to, but you just didn't feel like it today.
If I had a slingshot on easily.
No, I just reckon without it. Like, I reckon you probably could have done it last impress, but it was just that face saver that stuffed the whole thing up, man.
Yeah, it was just that little bit of a misgroove, like, just killed
Otherwise, it wouldn't have even been a challenge.
Oh, I hate you sometimes. But the rest of my session went well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, because I'm kind of like, this is my final week of the block anyway, so I'm like, yeah, fuck it. Like, I'm just gonna have a bit of fun. Some things I'm gonna deload, some things I'll not deload. I was like, I'm not in the mood to do any dumbbell pressing today, so I was like, fuck, they just can eat a dick.
Yep.
I did some pull-ups. They felt pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
I did like a set of like an AMRAP set and then a set of lean away pull-ups, which I fucking love.
Yeah.
And then I went over to the plate loaded prime lat pull down machine and loaded that up, which was a bit of fun.
Yeah, that's a beautiful machine.
And then just like went and did some arms and shit, and I was like, yep, it's a good day in the office.
Yeah.
But it was funny, like after I uploaded the video of the lat pull downs, I had like 3 people message me. They're like, dude, like you're looking like chonky, but in a good way. I'm like, thank you.
Yeah, you're looking super thick.
Like as I was saying to you earlier today, though, like I think because I mean, like it's been what 6 weeks ish now, so maybe like 5 or 6 weeks that I've been out of the landscaping job. I think actually just sort of like getting to a point where it's like, yeah, like I don't have that huge amount of stress going through my body on a daily basis. I was clocking up sort of 12 to 20,000 steps pretty much every single day religiously.
Yep.
Like even without taking Matt for a walk, because like I'd get home from work, it's like, oh, I'm on 18,000 steps for today. To like now being like, oh, sort of like 8 to 10,000 is like a pretty sweet spot for me. Like I'm pretty happy with that.
Yep.
Obviously being able to focus on sort of other things that are a little bit more in line with, the things that I value. And I think my body's just gone, yeah, we can fuck with this. And I just feel like it was weird. Like even when I put my belt on Saturday for my front squats, and even when I put my belt on today for my bench, I'm like, where it usually sits feels a bit tight. But I don't think I don't feel like I've put weight on. I just literally feel like my body has just gone.
Yep.
Like that photo that I sent you yesterday from the walk that I had in the park.
The nude one.
Or what other one did I send? But like that shot from the back, it's like my back looks really fucking wide.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, it does.
And I
Dude, you look at wide and thick, that's for sure.
and I like
It'd
it.
definitely be questioning your natty status, that's for sure.
But that's the funny thing is like I had some like so when I put up the lat pull down video today, literally someone was like, in the last 2 weeks, you just look like you have like doubled in size. They're like I hate to be that person, but have you finally decided to come over to the dark side? I'm like, no. No, I have not.
I haven't.
Not
I'm
yet.
just a thick boy.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. But it's also one of the things where I sit and I go, when I eventually do start taking some go-go juice, as people put it, I'm like, how ridiculous is it going to get?
I think you're going to be surprised. I think it'll get pretty ridiculous.
I hope so.
Yeah, and imagine if you were just imagine if you're a really good responder as well,
Which I feel like I will be.
because it does kind of work. It works the same for everyone, but it works on varying kind of degrees based on receptors and how well you respond to just like training, really. You know what I mean? To really dumb it down, you and I could train and recover the exact same way for 10 years and end up with completely different levels of musculature just based on how we respond to the stimulus. And to really dumb it down, it kind of does work in a similar fashion. But if you're a decent responder, dude, it's going to be freaking insane.
But like that, it also makes me sit and go, because like I'm sitting at like 98-ish now. And I'm like, if I'm 98, and like I wouldn't say that I wouldn't say I'm fat by any stretch of the imagination. Like, yeah, sure, like I'm holding probably a little bit more body fat than I need to be. Like I could probably diet off like 9-10 kilos pretty comfortably. Without like losing too much muscle.
Hmm.
And I would probably look pretty fucking good at that size and weight.
Yeah, but imagine this. You at the like a very similar body composition to what you are at right now, but at like 115.
Yeah, but this is the other thing. I don't know if I want to get that heavy, man.
I'll tell you what, life outside the gym will be less enjoyable.
Yeah, but
Life
like
inside the gym
will be fucking delicious.
Mind-blowingly good.
Yeah, I'll just have to like live in the gym and like
Yeah.
I'll sleep in the corner. I'll have sex in the bathrooms. Like it'll be fine.
Oh, dude, let me tell you from experience, sex at that size is gonna suck.
Well, that's the thing is like with
it's
what
not it's not all it's cracked up to be, man.
I don't imagine so. But like I just don't think I'd want to get up to like 110, 115. Like for me, I'm like, unless I was actively going to be like, hey, look, my goal is to really push competition again. I just don't think I've got any desire to be like, oh, I want to be like 110. If I could be like 92, but like fucking like oosh.
Or the other option would be, and it would also be like a very real possibility, would be to stay at around that like in between 95 to 100 kilo mark, but be like 8 to 10% body fat year round.
Yeah, which is probably more so where I think I would want to be.
Because that's a big boy at your height.
Fucking oath it is.
And 8 to 10 is like, that's pretty freaking
Lean.
lean, man. But you could maintain that year round
Yeah.
with support and it not be a detriment at all.
Look, again, like I think the stance that I've kind of always had on it, I think I will always continue to have on it, is one, like there's a few points I've kind of got. Number one is I'm like, I still don't think I'm strong enough to justify drugs, which I think is a hill I will always die on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I think a lot of people jump on gear way too quickly.
Oh, 100% they do.
And then
Absolutely.
the other point is like, what are my bloods showing? Like, if my natural test isn't dropping, I don't really see the need for me to continue, well, to try and like pursue other avenues. Like, I think I would look at it purely from a perspective of TRT, of going, hey, look, I've got a steady decline of my testosterone over the last 12, 18 months. Like, and I actually go to a doctor and be like, hey, look, here are test results that show the decline. Like, this is the rate that I'm looking at, and actually look at getting proper TRT, not some fucking backyard shit off some dipshit in the bathrooms.
Bathtub job.
Yep.
Hmm.
So I think
Yeah.
like that's
Yeah.
that. I think that's my kind of like barrier to entry at the moment. Is I'm like, one, like I'm still getting stronger. Two, my test levels aren't decreasing. Like they're, if anything, like the last 2 times that I've had my bloods done, my test levels have had a very, albeit small, but like still a gradual increase. So I'm like, why would I interfere?
Yeah, of course. I don't think it's necessary for you at this point at all. But I do
No.
think at some point it will be.
Oh,
Um,
100%.
not necessary, but I think at some point it would become
I
a
still,
huge benefit.
well, so this is an area that I am actually like quite, because obviously that like I'm a pretty big advocate when it comes to like say men's mental health and
Mm-hmm.
all that sort of stuff. There's like what I would be really curious about is if you took say 1,000 men between the ages of say like 25 and 40, who
Mm-hmm.
pretty much are all sitting there going, hey, look, I'm depressed, I have suicidal tendencies, whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to take them like, hey, we're going to give you a little bit, we're essentially going to give you a TRT dose
Mm-hmm.
and see if that makes any difference to their overall well-being. Because everyone that I know that has just started on like base level TRT, they always say, I just feel so much better. And I wonder
Yeah.
if that would have the impacts on overall mortality on men in those age ranges, where it's like, cool, it's an option.
Yeah. It's a super interesting topic. It's something that I've thought about quite a bit as well, is because like, I don't know the exact statistics, but that age group, the age group that we're in is, it's a bad age group for men's suicide. Um, we have really high rates of suicide at this age, and I've always kind of wondered, this is the age group where our natural testosterone does
Starts to
start
drop.
to dwindle, and all of the things that come along with the lowering of testosterone, the sleep, the bad sleep, the anxiety, the depression, the sore joints, the irritability, the low sex drive, all of the stuff.
Yeah.
Those are also all huge contributing factors to men going through midlife crises,
Mm-hmm.
trying to, revamp their life because they feel like they're in this rut. And I'm just wondering, I've always wondered if we can maybe look at maybe TRT and bringing those levels back up to what they were when we were 18 to 20, would that have an impact on the numbers?
Well, it's like if you look at the average testosterone levels of men in this day and age versus what they were 30 years ago, it is ghastly to see the difference. Like, it's quite a stark difference.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, again, we could go down like a massive conspiracy rabbit hole as to why they are actively trying to push overall testosterone levels down. And like, there's obviously, there's explanations if you want to go down that avenue. But
Mm-hmm.
I just look at it from like not even from like that perspective, just looking at it purely from like are we trying to actually help men, or are we just trying to continue to let men suffer?
Yeah, and I just don't really understand, to be honest, why testosterone has such a bad rap. Like, because it's like anything, right? Like anything good in excess becomes bad.
Mhm.
And I know from anecdotal experience and evidence that a little bit, enough, is good, can make
Mhm.
you feel really good, can improve performance, can improve your everyday life in so many different ways. And then there is a point where it it's diminishing returns, and then there's another point where the negatives actually quite severely outweigh any positives.
Mm.
Um, so it's like, yeah, everything good has a point where it becomes bad. You've taken off Panadols, you're going to die,
Yeah.
right? But Panadol in the right dose is fantastic. Like women don't have an issue when they're going through menopause, going and getting medication,
Mhm.
hormonal support. This like drop in testosterone is exactly the same thing, just for men. And the thing that we could utilize that would really help is just demonized because it's used in sport to make athletes better. And I think that's honestly the only reason why.
I think that obviously brings like a big stigma to it, but I think as well when you look at the relative levels that you need to be at to be prescribed TRT from your GP. Like
It's disgusting, dude.
I have a client of mine who's like he's in his 50s. We've been training together for a couple of years now. Like I think we started working together in like 2018 or something like that. And we have bloods that are pretty much done biannually for the last couple of years, and it shows just a steady decrease. And I'm like, dude, go to your fucking doctor and be like, cool, I have 6 years of bloods that show that pretty much every single time I get my bloods, there is a steady decline. Now, obviously, a guy in his 50s, you would expect that.
Mm-hmm.
But like, he works a very high stress job, very high end corporate. And he's like, dude, he goes, I don't care about like getting big and strong in the gym. He's like, I just don't want to feel like a bag of shit 24 fucking 7. And
Yeah,
like,
just be fatigued the moment you wake up.
yeah, like we've done as much as we kind of like, well, as much as I can within my script to kind of go, let's try these things here. That may help. I've also now gotten to a point where I'm like, cool, go and see this guy here that I know who specializes in like optimizing like, biochemistry and all that sort of stuff. And that's what his area of specialty and expertise.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like he should be able to go to his doctor and be like, hey, like I'm in my 50s, my testosterone is declining. I would like a prescription. But the
Mm-hmm.
doctors are still like, you still don't meet the requirements of how low it needs to be for me to be able to write it.
Yeah,
And it's
the
like,
requirements are ridiculously
but
low.
that's the fucking
Yeah.
stupid thing is like we should but again, this is where like I could go on a massive fucking spiel about healthcare here in Australia. Like on
Yeah.
one hand, it's fucking fantastic, but it's all reactive. There's no, it's not preventative healthcare. Like
No,
if we were
I don't really
genuinely,
think there's any situation that it's fucking fantastic, to be honest.
look, I mean, like obviously for the part, like if you compare our healthcare system to say America, like it's a lot fucking better. But
I would argue against that.
would you?
Yeah.
In what way?
Having lived there for 10 years.
Hmm.
Um
Why would you argue?
it depends.
Just
It
curious.
depends. Yeah, it depends, I guess, the situation that you're in, as to like what your perception of if it's better or not. If
Hmm.
you don't have private healthcare in America, you're pretty fucked.
Yeah.
But in saying that, pretty much every like company that you work for as part of your employment package will provide healthcare,
Okay.
healthcare benefits. So if you're gainfully employed, there's a 99% chance that you have healthcare provided through your employer. If you then also have the option to purchase private healthcare, which everyone over 30 in Australia has to do anyway, otherwise you get taxed out the
Taxed.
ass for not having it. So it's not any cheaper here than it is there once you hit 30 because you have to have it in both.
Mm.
And if you have private healthcare in the States, you don't pay shit. It's literally just like being here. It's
Okay.
just that like because the healthcare is private for the most part over there, the they just build the healthcare companies and it just goes directly to the healthcare provider. But if you don't have healthcare, yeah, like the prices are insane. But it would be
Mm.
the same here if Medicare didn't cover it. The
Yeah.
only people that are like, oh, healthcare here is so good are the people that rely on Medicare. And I mean, I lived in the States for 10 years. I had 2 ACL tears when I lived there. I didn't pay for shit because I had private healthcare. It was fine. I got in literally like I was in hospital for a week for stuff. Like I didn't pay for anything. It's fine.
Well, there you go. You learned something new.
But if you don't have private healthcare,
Yeah.
bad time.
Yeah. But yeah, so like my thing is like I would just look at healthcare here in Australia and go, it's not healthcare, it's sick care.
It is. Yeah. Unfortunately.
Hmm.
Unfortunately. Well, I think I'm going to join you in the DOMS club.
It's kicking in, is it?
Ooh, it's been kicking in like slowly all day.
Mm.
It's kicking in pretty hard right now since I've been sitting down for about an hour.
Nice.
I think she's going to be a nasty one.
I'm hoping that tomorrow is just a little bit less shit for me. But like the weird thing for me is it's like right in my like upper abs,
Yeah.
which I've not had DOMs there in years. And it's to the point where I'm like, I've almost forgotten like how to navigate when you're that sore up so high. Like it's almost like the bottom of my ribs feel bruised. And
Yeah, I know the feeling.
bro, this is not a good time.
That's hard. Yeah, that sucks.
Yeah.
Man, I had the one of the best training sessions this morning that I have had in a really long time.
Talk to me.
Just from a fun perspective.
Because you joined a new gym, didn't you?
Yeah, we joined a new gym on the weekend, just to train out of.
Yeah.
For a couple of reasons. One of the reasons was we wanted to spend more time in Newcastle, as opposed to like Maitland industrial area. We've been going into Newcastle on the weekends and swimming on Sunday mornings, nice and early in the baths, and then getting bacon and egg rolls afterwards.
Beautiful.
And we kind of, when we moved here from Port, that was something that we said that we would do as much as we possibly could. And just over the years, we just kind of stopped as things got busy. And we really made an effort this year to start doing it again, and we're having a lot of fun doing it. So we thought if we join a gym that's kind of in that direction, that will get us going in that direction more and help facilitate like more visits out that way, which we really want to do. It's next door to a really nice coffee shop that we like. So that kind of works well with our early morning training sessions a couple of times a week. We're going to finish our session, walk next door, sit down, get a nice coffee, have half an hour just to chat with no phones and stuff, and just use that as like a really nice way to start the day.
Beautiful.
And they have like a nice outdoor area too, so we're planning on sitting outside while we can, while the weather permits. The other reason was we wanted to train away from where we work a little bit, just so that we can kind of separate the two. I've always found that being someone that's worked in a gym since I was 18 years old, it can be really hard to train where you work, especially full time. Because I'm a friendly person and because Em's quite friendly as well, it's just really easy to walk into the gym, see all of the people that are there, start talking, and you don't want to just leave your headphones on and put your head down and go into like training mode, because obviously you work there, so you kind of go into work mode. and it just makes it hard to switch in between training mode and work mode, training mode and work mode.
Yeah.
I really do like to separate the two. And the third reason was I wanted to start using some machines.
Mhm.
Um, and so I talked to you a little bit about this yesterday. I've actually taken all SBD out of my programming for a little bit.
Mhm.
I talked to a couple of people about it. You were one of them, and Josh was another one.
Mhm.
Josh from Nexus. He's recently done that as well.
Yep.
And so I kind of reached out to him just to get his viewpoint on it, and kind of like air out my thought process and see what his thoughts were. And both of you guys were like, yeah, I think you definitely should do it. Just pull the trigger and get it done.
Yeah.
So
Do you
that's
want
what
to
I did.
do you want to maybe run, like, just so the people that are listening who may be in a position where they're kind of thinking, oh, well, is there potential for me to need to do that? Do you want to kind of run through your reasons as to why and what you're hoping to get out of it?
Yeah, for sure. So obviously with the knee issue that I'm carrying at the moment, um, it's starting to get really good. I've put a heavy focus recently on rehab, and just kind of like learning to move better. I've also been carrying a shoulder injury for the better part of a year and a half now, to where for literally the entirety of last year, I couldn't put my arm above my head or behind my back. um, and I'm able to do both of those things now, but it still isn't 100%. So what I want to do now is take SBD out altogether and really the lean into the principles that I guess I preach so often of periodizing your training and not having to be hyper specific with comp lifts year round to still get really strong. I want to use the machines to start to move better, to provide a little bit of external stability while I really push some hypertrophy,
Mhm.
and really push some different ranges that I'm not really comfortable in doing so without the support of the machines at the moment.
Yep.
And I just want to get back to I want to push everything hard, and I want to focus on hypertrophy. I want to focus on moving better, really lean into just getting bigger and stronger and faster as an athlete and as a human, so that then when it is time to peak again, I'll be in a better position to do so.
Nice.
And I really think that, and I have a conversation with Josh coming out tonight, so it'll be out before everyone hears this, and then another one coming out next week that literally says this. But I really think majority of powerlifters lean way too hard into doing hyper specific comp lifts year round.
Mm.
And I'm not sure if that's because they're scared to go away from it because they think if they go away from it, they're going to get worse at it, or if they're worried about, public perception of moving away from it, or if they're just unaware of the benefits of doing so, or maybe a mixture of all three.
From my experience, I would probably say it's probably a mixture of all three, but also that, you know, potentially even some of the newer powerlifters or the guys who've been doing it for like 15 years and that's all they know, with having so much of their identity wrapped up in, oh, my name is whatever it is, I'm a powerlifter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like you and I had this conversation, and I even kind of felt the same way, and I know better. But what I think is important to distinguish is you can be a power lifter without doing 2 squats and 2 deadlifts and 3 bench presses every week. Like that, it's not like you can still be a powerlifter and periodize your training to work on other qualities when you're not in a competition prep or you don't have a competition on the horizon. And in fact, I think you should do that.
To be honest, though, I think it's just boils down to a massive scarcity mindset for a lot of athletes. Like, even if I reflect back on the rehab for my back and with me running really heavy good mornings
Mm-hmm.
in place of a deadlift.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, cool, like this is a movement that I can work through. Literally, I start to reintegrate deadlifts. Not only do I go, I've just put 7.5 kilos on an 8 RM,
Mm-hmm.
I also get more hamstring engagement than I have pretty much ever.
Mm-hmm.
And quite often when I'm like in a mirror sitting down training upper body and I take a cheeky photo, it's like, cool, my hamstrings are just like, pow.
Yeah. Yeah, they're out.
But never really noticed that until recently after I was like, cool, I'm going to do some heavy hinge work. And I
Yep.
think sort of coming back to your point of training a little bit more variability, I feel like that is a massive, massive, massive gap for a lot of people to explore. So
Yeah.
it makes me really happy that you are taking the time to go, I'm going to go off and do this because
Yeah.
I think it'll pay dividends for you.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And like, I want to build more muscle. I want to get a bit bigger, and that's going to lend itself well to utilizing that new tissue when it comes back to a really heavy strength focused program. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about it, man. And today's session was really good. My biggest focus this morning was movement quality
Mm-hmm.
and output on every single set.
What was
So,
your session like this morning in terms of like what movements did you run through?
so I did a kettlebell. I literally went in. I did 10 minutes on the air bike
Mm-hmm.
to just get things moving and warm up, which I thoroughly enjoyed doing to start my session. I also think a big part of warm ups should just be getting warm. Like, it's literally in the name. Like, warm up, get warm. Like, it helps, believe it or not. And then I felt pretty good. So I went straight into kettlebell loaded hip airplanes with the sprinter pose every rep.
Mm-hmm.
So I did just 2 sets of those. And then I did one little like warm up set of body weight walking lunges, again with a sprinter pose in between every single step, which was super juicy. But I just did body weight I did like 10 reps.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did one set of with the 20 kilo dumbbells, walking lunges. And then I did one set with the 16 kilo dumbbells, walking lunges. So I did a set of 12 and then a set of 15 per leg. Went over to the hip press machine.
Nice.
Yep, loaded four plates per side, so 8 plates total.
Mm-hmm.
Did a set of 12, took 2 plates off, did a set of 17. That was insanely fun
Mm-hmm.
and juicy as like my quads were just like so full. I had veins all the way up my calves into my quads, which I was like, this is super cool.
Mm-hmm.
Straight from that, I did a set of dumbbell RDLs. I did 7 reps with 80 kilos in each hand. And then I did a set of 12 with 60 kilos in each hand. And then I did a set of I limped up the stairs. Emphasize limped because by this stage I was completely cooked.
Mm-hmm.
I did a set of lying hamstring curls, a set of 15, and then I did another set of lying hamstring curls, 20 reps, and then I did a set of weighted 90-degree hip extensions, and then I did a set of body weight 90-degree hip extensions.
Nice.
That was it. 12 sets total,
Mm-hmm.
not including the hip airplanes.
Yep.
And literally my focus was every single set 1 to 0 RIR, but movement quality in everything. I wasn't sacrificing movement quality to get any extra reps. And 12 sets was all I needed. I was completely fried. Like, my legs were proper shaking and I was drenched in sweat.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I'm just going to have to sit on this bench for 10 minutes before we get in the car because I'm just not even sure that I can walk there.
Yeah.
It was fantastic.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was just a really fun session. And I enjoyed it a lot. So
Nice. I look forward to seeing how you go in this little block over the next couple of weeks and sort of see if that, as much as I hate the term, like if the motivation is still as high as it is in like 3, 4, 5 weeks time.
fuck, we've had some technical difficulties today, but we'll get through it. Tomorrow's going to be fun for me putting all this together. Well, I apologize to everyone who's listening. This has been painful.
It is what it is, man.
Yeah, it's all good. I'm trying not to get frustrated.
Woosa.
It's testing me, that's for sure.
Oh, I fucking know it is.
Can you see the color of my face changing?
Yes.
Oh, good. But yeah, so I do think it's super important to really periodize your training and work on different qualities throughout the year so that you don't kind of run into issues along the way that could have been avoided.
Yeah. And I think that's obviously something that we would probably both see quite frequently with a lot of powerlifters who get stuck in the mindset of going, it's one prep after another, one prep after another, one prep after another. And which is why, like, I heavily encourage clients to be like, cool, like, let's pick like 2 comps a year.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't really need to do much more than that. Like, it doesn't take away from, being able to train and get stronger and have all those positive influences sort of come in through training. But I think a lot of people place a lot more of an emphasis on, as you said a little bit earlier, like the specificity around competition prep.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, like, and again, like, I think, depending on how advanced or how much of a beginner the client is will kind of dictate the exposure level. But the good thing about a client that's probably pretty new to it is they're not going to be lifting that much weight where they should be having to really navigate a ton of fatigue.
No.
Like, again, you look at like Jesus Oliveira and his training leading at Sheffield. Like, he would have needed a lot of recovery from like his heavy squats and his heavy bench and his heavy deads and figuring out how to do that. But again, like, arguably one of the best in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Very different to fucking old Jimmy from down the street who is 2 years into training, has decided to try powerlifting and can squat, 160 kilos at 85 kilos body weight. Like, it's like, yeah, it's relatively heavy for him, but in the grand scheme of things, like the global fatigue that he's going to have to deal with as a result of that squat, it's not the same.
Not even close. So you mentioned Jesus. Do you want to just jump straight in and go through Sheffield?
I mean, we can. I feel like, it's funny. Like, I obviously put that in as a topic I would like to talk about after Sheffield, but I think obviously with the time difference, like not actually being able to watch it was a bit of a pain in the ass.
Yeah,
but like
we can just talk about some highlights.
Like, I think my point, like, I'm disappointed that he didn't have the comp that he was expected to have. Like, which obviously I think is the nature of powerlifting, in that, you can have a great prep and it can all fall apart on the day. And similarly, you can also have a terrible prep and it somehow comes together beautifully on the day. And sometimes it just doesn't fucking make sense.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what he was expecting to do on the day would have, obviously, like, as we've spoken about, like, it would have been a first in powerlifting history. Like, would have been an all-time total world record for someone who's drug-free and in sleeves. Like,
mm-hmm.
I don't know why I did that fucking... Like, when you, like, compare it to, say, someone like Andrei Milanichev, that, at Big Dogs, and he squatted, 480, benched 255, 260, and pulled 400. Like, to be fair, Big Dogs was a few years ago now, but
mm-hmm.
I always look and I go, if you've got guys that aren't restricted with the drugs that they can use, they've got knee wraps and all that sort of stuff, how are they not so much further in front of guys in sleeves? Like, that's just always a thing I've always been, like, really fascinated with. Also, like, this is by no means me going, I don't think that he is drug-free. Like, I think if that's the fed he's competing in, until a blood test or a urine test or any sort of drug test suggests otherwise, he kind of has that status. But I'm like, it always fascinates me watching those guys. I'm like, oh, cool. You compete in sleeves and you're out squatting the guys that are squatting in wraps.
Yeah, it's
You're
crazy.
you compete in a tested fed and you're out totaling guys that don't have to worry about drugs. And I think coming back to the point that he's just a fucking freak of an athlete. But I think my thing is I was disappointed to wake up on Sunday and be like, oh, he didn't even place. Like that.
Yeah, I know.
And
And I was
I could
having
only
this.
imagine. Sorry, go on.
No, go finish your
I was
sentence.
gonna say, like, I was just like, I couldn't, like, obviously, like, me waking up and going, oh, well, that was a bit disappointing. Like, I could only imagine how shattered he must fucking feel as well, given the
Of
work that he
course.
put into his prep.
Of course, yeah. And I was having this conversation with someone only yesterday, and I said, I think he underperformed, which is crazy to say that about someone who totaled 1100
It's like I total 1100 on a bad day.
on a bad day. But you know, the guy that I was talking to about it was like, no, I don't think he underperformed. He totaled 1100, and he missed a couple of lifts. I think he went five for nine or something like that. But he had a great prep, and he did this, and it just didn't go to plan on that. I was like, well, that exactly is what underperforming is. So
Yeah.
what you just described is him underperforming, like albeit a ridiculously high total. It's not what he was capable of on the day, or what we think and what he think he was capable of on the day, which is wild to say. But to be honest, man, I hope that this just lights a bit of a fire under him, and he comes back next time and just does something even more wild. Because some of those lifts that he did, that he posted during his prep, man, they were some big numbers, and they almost looked effortless.
But I mean, like, this is always the aspect of competition that I find really interesting is when you're in training and you're in your home gym, home turf, you don't have the same pressure that you do like leading to it. Because I mean, for example, if you look at the highest payout for that comp, it was for the female Polish girl that won. She got a 40,000 British pound payout for that, which is fucking insane.
Mm-hmm.
Like, obviously, if we're thinking sport at a global level, it's not that much, but for powerlifting, that is so much money.
Yeah, that's a lot for powerlifting.
Like, that essentially could be like, hey, well, there's a year salary for you to now go and prep for Sheffield next year to go and win next year.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's 70 grand. You don't have to work this year. Just go train full time, be an athlete.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that's the really exciting part. Yeah. Like, the exciting part as far as powerlifting goes on a global scale, it's like, cool. There is now an option that she could turn and go, hey, I'm a professional powerlifter.
Yeah. Yeah. And
I think that's pretty exciting.
Think of the progress that could be made in a sport like this, where fatigue management is such a big part of the sport. Whereas if all you have to worry about is powerlifting, you could be leaps and bounds ahead of your competitors, and we could start seeing some really, really crazy shit if we could get some full-time powerlifters. Poor man.
Well, I mean, like, look at some of the performances from some of the females over the weekend. Like, we had, one of the girls in the 84 plus category who scored a 300.5 in sleeves.
That was my biggest highlight of the entire thing.
I'm like, that's because, again, this is the thing. You have guys that compete untested in wraps at like 110, 125 that still can't squat 300.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a female in sleeves at a tested competition squatting over 300 kilos. Like, that is fucking impressive as all fuck. But I still think what's probably the most impressive lift for me on that day was, again, the Polish girl that benched 154 in the 69 kilo class.
69.
Like, I mean, yeah, it's nuts. But, like, that is a fucking big bench.
It's ridiculous.
Like, she almost benches what you do and what I do, and she's like, I mean, fucking a lot lighter than we are.
I know. That is super impressive, and you sent that to me, and I was like, oh man, this is starting to get pretty wild. But
yeah,
I still stand by it. The thing that impressed me most was the 300 kilo female sleeved squat, just because I know what 300 kilos feels like to squat, and it is damn heavy. And I am 140 kilos untested in reps.
Yeah.
And it is heavy as shit.
Yeah.
And so for a much lighter tested female in sleeves to do that, I can appreciate how heavy that must feel, because I know how heavy it feels for me, and I'm just like, oh, that is just so impressive.
I think the thing that makes me really excited after seeing something like that, though, is I look back this is going back to 2015, 2016 was kind of like the first time that we started seeing guys squatting 400. And then it's like the moment that one guy did it, it was just like fucking the floodgates opened up and then everyone fucking started doing it. I'm just kind of hoping that the same sort of thing happens where it's like, oh, look, we've had one, like super heavyweight, which again, like you look at 84 plus, it's like, well, whatever. But to be able to sit there and go, okay, cool, well, we've now had a female squat 300 in sleeves in competition. You're up. Like, obviously, there's been a couple of girls that have squatted 300 in wraps in untested federations. Where I don't know if that was
still not that many though.
No, I think the only one that I could really think of off the top of my head is like Hunter Henderson.
There was one.
But I don't remember if that was in training or if that was in comp. I know she scored like 302.5.
Yeah, there was one at the big meet fairly recently. I can't remember what it was called. You know the one I'm talking about? It was like a few months ago now. When Will was there. I don't know if you know that. But there was
was that the American Pro?
Yeah, the American Pro. That's it.
Yeah.
There was a female there that squatted really high 200s, and I think that was like the biggest ever squat by a female at that point. So from memory, I mean, it was something like that. So yeah, this 300's wild. Just absolutely insane.
But so fucking impressive.
Oh, incredible, man. Just so incredible. And it, like you said, it just opens the door for what's possible.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it just takes someone to just do something that everyone just thought was never be done. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, well, that is possible. And then more people start to push more boundaries.
Yeah.
It'd be cool to see what happens.
I'm excited for it.
Yeah, me too, man. Yeah, I didn't really see much else, to be honest.
Like, I saw a bunch of the highlights.
I saw that heeled squat, actually. Yeah. That world record was pretty nice, too. That was actually a beautiful squat, too.
And that's, like, the thing that I really liked about it from, like, the men's perspective is it was all the sort of, like, light to midweight guys that did the best. Like, all the 93s did really, really well. And that was, like, obviously, the winner. I think it may have been a podium from, like, the 93s. Don't quote me on that, but I know the Swedish guy that won, he was a 93 kilo lifter. And he had a fucking wonderful performance. But I think, seeing guys who are like 93 kilos in sleeves, drug tested, squatting 335, pulling, close on 800 pounds. There was that one American guy benching like 240. I'm like, it's just fucking bonkers. But again, so because I remember when I first started coming up through powerlifting, it was like the 82s, the 90s, and the 100s were super competitive. And then it went through a phase where it was really competitive in like the 110s and the 125s. And I kind of hope it starts to swing back towards it like 82. Like when, I'm talking like GPC Pro Raw sort of thing. Like watching the first Pro Raw that I ever went to was when I saw Pat Morrison pull 3 something. It was fucking insane. But it was like at 82 kilos, he literally just like walks in, pulls a monster deadlift, wins. And I'm like,
he is insane though.
Oh, he's a freak. Love him to death.
Everything that he does is insane.
Well, I mean, like, fuck. At Mulder, he squatted 400. Well, 400.5, sorry. I'm not going to rob him of the 500 grams. But, like, that man is a freak.
And it's also a perfect example of literally what we were talking about just before, where he does lots of other things other than just train like a powerlifter.
He runs, he rides his bike.
Yeah, from what I can see.
Has a lot of versatility to his training belt. But I think this is also an aspect of training that a lot of people forget. It's like, have fucking fun with it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, again, with the basketball club that I've started working with at the moment, there's something that I've realized I've really missed a lot. That's jumping.
Yeah, dude, jumping's fun.
Dude, like, even, like, I haven't, again, obviously, like, I've trained kind of like a powerlifter for, a decade
Mm-hmm.
and haven't really done a whole lot of, like, explosive work or running or anything like that. Just come like, like, there just hasn't really been a major need to. And I'm just like, I just don't really care for it at the moment. But, like, one of the guys I was working with who's, like, going through some of his rehab stuff at the moment, he took a shot, and the ball's like, he obviously made the shot and it's come down, and the bottom of the nets are quite tight so that the ball sits and then it drops. And it came in and it got stuck in the net. And I'm like, I'm either going to make a fool of myself here or I'm going to, like, tear something or something like that. But I've literally, like, just jumped up, grabbed it with both hands and, like, come down. And he looks at me, he's like, dude, for, like, a dude as small and, like, stocky as you are, he's like, I'm surprised at, like, how high and easily you got that out. I'm like, man, like, when I was 15, I could dunk. I'm like,
Could you really?
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive because you're a garden gnome.
On a good day. Yeah. But, when I was young, I grew up playing basketball, grew up playing, or not playing, but, like, competing in track and field as well. So it was all fast, explosive stuff, which is why I think I was kind of okay at powerlifting.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I say okay, I'm not going to say good because I don't really consider myself a good powerlifter, but I'm like, I was okay at it. I hit some decent numbers. But, like, I jumped up and I grabbed the ball and I was like, fuck, like, I really missed that. And then, like, took a couple of shots at night and I was like, fuck. Like, I can feel that, like, my body just isn't in condition to, like, shooting a ball. And, like, even, like, trying to recalibrate, like, how heavy does a ball feel to me now versus what it used to feel to me when I was, like, 16, 17.
Yep.
And then, like, actually trying to, like, figure out, like, okay, well, if the ring is this high and this far away from me, like, how much do I actually need to give it to try and make this shot without either, like, severely, like, under determining it or, like, overshooting it like a motherfucker.
Yep.
But just, yeah, going and, like, shooting and, like, jumping and all that sort of stuff. I'm like, fuck, I missed this.
Yeah, and that's still training. And if you started to incorporate some stuff like that as well, it'd probably make you a better lifter, man.
Or it would get me injured and I would then not be able to train properly.
I think if you did it the right way, it would probably actually have you in a position where you would probably get injured less. Not that you get injured a lot.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean?
Years and years and years ago, I used to do jiu-jitsu.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved jiu-jitsu, but I was all, like, you talk to anyone that rolls consistently, it's like you get a toe caught on something, you jar a finger, like, whatever it might be. But because of, like, how much grief my hips can give me in some of the positions where it's like if I had someone in my guard and they were trying to, like, pass my guard, the amount of time, like, my hips would be a bit angry with me for, like, a day or two afterwards, and I'd try and go into the gym and train. I'm like, this is hard.
Yeah.
So for me, it was like, I enjoyed learning how to strangle people. Yeah, but it's fun to strangle people.
Oh yeah, dude, I do jiu-jitsu too. It's great. I much prefer it over striking, but I can't do it anymore, obviously, just because it's, like, the art of joint manipulation, and my joints are not good already, and I don't want them manipulated. Yeah, so it's definitely just striking only from now on. But I'm talking, like, obviously jiu-jitsu is, like, a whole different thing, but just, like, some jumping, some skipping, some moving side to side, shooting hoops, things like that you don't really think of as training or as of injury prevention could actually put you in a position where you're a little bit more robust and a little bit I just feel like when you get hyper specific in the way that you move, what that does is that then makes you fragile in positions outside of that.
Agreed.
So when you expose yourself to different positions and different ways of moving, you become less fragile. A perfect example of that is, the NFL player that we've referenced a couple of times on the show, Christian McCaffrey, and the way that he trains. And that dude is durable as fuck.
Yeah.
And he just, a big core principle of his training is to just put him in shit positions. That's it. And when you're playing football, when you get put in shit positions, and a lot of the time that's when people get injured, when they're kind of like forced into these positions that they're not used to, and they crumble.
Yeah.
He's become used to those positions because he's put himself in them so many times in training that he's now very durable. Scored a fantastic touchdown today too.
Yeah.
Oh, it was beautiful. I'll see if I can find a clip and send it to you. He's so explosive, man. He's such an impressive athlete.
Did you watch the Super Bowl?
I did. I watched every single second of it, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
What was your main takeaway from it? Because obviously I didn't really watch it. I watched a little bit of it while I was at the gym, but I know probably about 3/5 of fuck all about American football.
Mm-hmm.
So like I literally watch it. I'm like, I just want to see someone get hit real hard. That's all I want to see.
There was a few of those.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, there was a few really good hits. I have a couple of takeaways from an athletic viewpoint, like a strength coach viewpoint. The NFL players just really impressed me, man. And guys like Christian McCaffrey, I had a close eye on him. He had a really good game, and just the way that he moves is fucking beautiful, man. It's just so pretty to watch. And if you have a moment and you just like want to witness like that type of shit that we were talking about last week, where with the hockey player that Jordan put on his story,
Yeah,
just cool stuff like that, I would implore you to just go on YouTube and type in like Christian McCaffrey highlights and just watch 5 minutes. The guy, the way that he moves is impeccable. He's got, and the cool thing that I love about watching him play, and he's not even my favorite player, and he plays for a team that I actually don't like at all. But from an athletic standpoint, he is one of my favorite players to watch because he's so explosive, but he's also so good at using his speed at different times. So one of the things that we always spoke about when I was playing League was the really great players create time by not doing everything at 100% and having different kind of speeds that they play at different times of the game, but also at different times during one play. So like one thing that a really good halfback might do is like they'll take 3 really fast steps towards the line, and that engages a few defenders right in front of them because they're coming at them quickly. But then they'll kind of like back off their speed by 30% and kind of start to float a little bit sideways. So those guys are still engaged, but then the fringe guys are also engaged, but it's also, they're not as engaged enough to rush up because you've backed your speed off. So now you're kind of creating this illusion of more time. And McCaffrey does that so well. He'll like burst onto the ball, but then in a split second, he'll be able to hold himself up on a step, create space, and then burst speed again on the next step and actually burst through the hole. It's so impressive to watch. And if he'll like plant his foot, and if something moves in front of him, like if a defender moves, he can, off that one planted foot, he can change direction in pretty much whatever way he wants to go. He can slow his speed down. He can speed it back up. He's got 3 different bursts of speed that he can use. Oh man, it's just so impressive to watch.
I can imagine.
So that was really cool. And he got a lot of touches, so I got to see a lot of that. And the other thing that my big takeaway from the game was that I fucking love sport and I fucking love Patrick Mahomes because that guy is just an absolute freak. He do you know much about Patrick Mahomes? So he's the quarterback of Kansas City.
Mhm.
He's a fairly young player. I don't know exactly how many years he's been in the league. I think 6.
Yep.
And out of that 6, he's been to the playoffs, I think, all 6 years. And
Fuck,
he's
that's not a bad
won,
effort.
yeah, he's won his like championship. So there's like 2 leagues in the NFL. He's won his side of it 5 out of the 6 years. And he's won, I think, 4 now.
Yeah.
Three or four Super Bowls. And so he's won more than Tom Brady has at his age.
Nice.
And all of his stats are actually like ahead of Brady's stats at versus like the same amount of games.
Yeah.
But he's just, man, he's just so incredible. Hey, so it was wild to watch because in Australian sport, like it doesn't really that often come down to the wire.
No.
Whereas in American sport, it oftentimes comes down to the very last play. You see that a lot in basketball, and you see it a lot in American football as well. And it went into overtime, but before it went into overtime, it was like they were winning, they were losing. Kansas was losing, then they were winning, then they were losing, and he got the ball back with about 2 minutes left on the clock. And then he went all the way down the field in like play, just like marched the ball all the way down the field. And there was like 15 seconds left in the game. And they were, like 30 yards out or something. And the commentators were like, oh, there's 15 seconds. There's so much time on the clock here. And I'm like, there's fucking 15 seconds left. I'm like stressing out because there's still 3 points behind. And then they run a couple of plays and then there's like 6 seconds left on the clock. And the commentator's like, there's still 6 seconds on the clock. There's heaps of time left in this game. And I'm just like, dude, you got to do something now. There's 6 seconds left. You don't have time. They ended up kicking a field goal, tied the match, went into overtime. The 49ers went down, kicked a field goal, so then they're 3 points behind again. And then the way the overtime works is both teams get an opportunity to score a touchdown. So the 49ers went down, they kicked a field goal, not a touchdown. So then Kansas got the ball back like on their goal line, right? And they just went all the way down the field. It took like a 7-minute drive and then scored a touchdown.
Nice.
And I was just like, this guy, man, to be that cool, calm, and collected at 25 years old on the biggest stage, being only the second team ever to win back-to-back Super Bowls, is ridiculous. That's like, I just love sport so much, eh? So yeah, that was probably my biggest takeaway is he's the GOAT, and I just want to watch way more sport.
Do it.
But yeah, watch Christian McCaffrey highlights, man. He's a beast.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about programming?
Do I ever?
Let's talk about a little bit of programming, and then I for some reason the questions didn't load into the spreadsheet, but I remember a couple of them. We can do those as well, and then we'll call it. So lead us off on some programming chat.
So, I think the way that, again, like a lot of things we talk about, I kind of always like to utilize principles. I don't really have this is the only way I do it. Anything outside of this is ridiculous. It's kind of like, let's use the right tool for the right job.
Yep.
So one thing I will always kind of do as a standard across the board is I'll always go, where does someone want to go? where are they now? Let's work backwards from there and kind of see how it needs to map out. Like, for example, and I could use this off the top of my head because it's literally something I did today. I have an old client of mine that started back coaching with me this week.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, the goals that I have for 2024 is I want to squat 160 kilos. I want to bench somewhere between 100 and 120, and I want to deadlift 200 kilos.
Nice numbers.
And I'm like, fuck yeah, let's do it. She's like, I don't necessarily want to compete. I may down the track later this year decide, hey, look, let's do a comp. But she's like, realistically, for now, it's just gym numbers. And I'm like, amazing. So the way that I kind of will go, well, where do I need numbers to fall right now? Like, first block back together, I'm not going to come down on her with a fucking hammer of the gods and be like, you must go 20 kilos heavier than you went in the last few weeks because now I'm taking control and you'll just fucking do what I tell you to do.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, the way that I always try and preface it is I'm like, programming is a very rough outline of where are you and where do we want to go and what do the numbers kind of need to do to kind of give us a bit of an idea that you're ready to achieve the goal that you've set out to. And this is obviously where individuality of expression comes into play quite a bit. If I look back to my early days of competing, my rep work was always atrocious relative to what my top end was. And I could always push my top end really, 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 really high compared to like what my rep work would suggest. Like, I think the first time I squatted 600 pounds, so like 272, my best set of 5, I'm pretty sure was like 205.
Yeah, right.
My best triple was like 230. Like there was the numbers didn't really line up to go, you should be able to squat, high 200s.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's kind of the inverse, whereas like all of my rep work is like, you should have a much bigger lift than what you do. Which is obviously like, one of the fun parts of training where it's like, you can kind of condition yourself to be able to do something depending on what your objective is. Like we've spoken a bit at the moment, like my goals aren't exactly top end strength. There are a lot of them are base level strength. But I think like when we are looking at things from a programming perspective of going, well, if we are, for example, trying to say deadlift 200 kilos, it's like, okay, well, where are you now? Now, I know for a fact this client has had a 195 kilo deadlift in competition.
Whew.
Yeah, she's very strong.
Yeah, no shit. That's super strong.
Yeah. On the day, like, so again, she competed pretty much just before, it was about a year ago, just before I moved up to Newey. And yeah, like benched 92.5, I think it was, which was like a national record bench. And then she pulled 195, which was a national record deadlift as well. And I was like, I could have put 200 on the bar, but I'm like, I wanted the heaviest deadlift that we possibly could have gotten within the realms today, which was 195. Like I said to him, like, I reckon if we'd gone 200, you may have hitched it or just like freaked out. But so like, obviously if we're looking at sort of like where the focus needs to be, I will always kind of go, where are we at the moment? Where are we trying to shoot to? What's the relative increase percentage wise? So obviously the lift that's got the highest percentage increase we need is probably going to need higher frequency to be able to facilitate more change and adaptation. Obviously, if we're looking at her deadlift, it's like, cool, we've got 5 kilos we need to put in that this year. That's not that hard. No. The bench, she benched 95 a couple of weeks ago. It's like, cool, if you want to bench 100, like that's a pretty achievable goal in a fairly short time frame, depending on how we want to approach it. If the goal was, I want to hit these numbers as quickly as possible, it's like, cool, I would probably be like, come and see me 4 times a week for a month, and at the end of the month, we'll have those numbers ticked off. Happy days. But for me, the way that I'm approaching her programming at the moment is very much like a, cool, if we are looking over a year, and we are looking over a long game, but like, let's get you to a point where we are pulling, say, 160 for sets of 5. And that's pretty indicative that we're in the ballpark figure of where we kind of need to be setting you up to pull 200.
Yep.
And then getting to a point where it's like, so that's, 80-ish% for sets of 5. If we're then looking at the next sort of like layer, it's like, cool, if we can be around about 90% for a triple, that's 180 for a set of 3, which I'm pretty sure she has pulled before. And then obviously, depending on how we would do a peak leading into that, that could very well be cool. Like 200 might be there. You might just miss it, but like it'll be pretty close.
Pretty close, yeah.
So I think for me, like I always kind of will work back from where we want to be kind of to where we are and kind of go, well, what sort of increases would we have to see over this block? And obviously, if we're not constrained by time as we're not in this situation, like if the numbers don't quite line up, it's like, cool, they don't have to yet because we've got time that we can kind of go through a cycle, come back down, repeat another cycle, and then we might hit down here, or we might have to do another one after that.
Yep.
So I think sort of coming back to like kind of like my overarching principle around like, well, principles, it's like one, if the idea is it's a rough guideline of where are they and where do they want to go, and it's a rough roadmap to kind of go, well, we're here and we're probably going to do a bit of this to get to here, and then it's very much a use the appropriate tool for the right job.
Yeah, and the tool can change as well.
It can change very quickly, yeah. Like I've given her stuff where I'm like, yeah, like I'm pretty sure this will help get you stronger, but it may not.
Mm-hmm.
Like I had a client that I started with a couple of weeks ago, and we had 8 weeks to prep for a comp.
Mm-hmm.
And now her and I've had the conversation around me going, usually I wouldn't take on someone 8 weeks out from a comp and be like, yeah, let's do it. Because the reality is we're not changing jack shit in that time.
No.
But I mean, like I've known her for years. Like I've watched her lift for ages. Like I kind of have a bit of an idea as, what I'm trying to achieve with her. But I've also pretty much said, I'm like, we have a big off season planned.
Yep.
But like a short window like that, I'm like, cool, I've got lifts I want you to be doing outside of your comp lifts, one of them being dips. Her gym doesn't have dip bars. So it's like, okay, cool, well, we can't give you dips then. But it's like, well, what exercise can I give you that will kind of elicit a similar outcome? And that's kind of one of the lenses as well that I like to look at things from, is not necessarily going like, oh, well, you do a bench and then because the bench is kind of like this, well, then it now means that we have to do incline stuff to balance shit out. It's like, if you're in a comp prep, you don't necessarily need to balance shit out. You kind of need to double down on the patterns and like solidify and reinforce them. Off season is where you want to balance shit out.
Yep, exactly. So this comes back to just like the conversation we were having before about periodizing. Yeah.
So I think, again, how I look at programming is very much specific to the individual. But again, to sort of like recap, I think I go, let's take you from where you are to where you want to be using a rough guideline, and that will change most likely throughout the time. Excuse me. And then sort of utilizing the overarching principle of like right job for the right tool. There are times when I sit there and go, I love, pause squats to help reinforce someone's squat. But then there are other times when I might go, you know what? You're not going to do a pause squat. I'm going to do a front squat instead. There may be times when I say to someone, hey, you're going to do tempo bench press. There may be sometimes when I say to someone, hey, you're going to do block press. Like every individual, while yes, they have similarities, they will most likely need accessories that are specific to where they are weaker in a lift.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, and I think it's important as coaches to, I believe, to not get locked into one style of programming either.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, there's lots of different ways of going about things, and we all have our preferences and biases on what works best. I just think it's a big mistake, and you're very much limiting yourself and the progress of your athletes if you just say, I only program linear progression.
Yeah, I mean,
I,
like
I only do block. I only do block programming. That's it. Like
yeah,
I think there's a tool for the job, and the tool can change. Like, and that can even just be that the style in which you program can change because it works better for that individual for whatever reason.
like I've got again, like I've got biases towards how I like to program, which I think any good coach over a decade plus long like career, they'll sit there and go, yeah, like I have my biases because they're tried and tested.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think a really classic debate that comes up in the programming sphere is, RPE versus percentage versus whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like this is probably going to piss a lot of people off, but I feel like RPE is a really lazy way, which don't get me
I
wrong,
fucking hate RPE.
I do and I don't. Like,
I
for
do.
example, like this new client or the client that I've had that started back with me, the first block that we're running together, it's like, cool, I'm giving her RPE because I'm like, I want to see where she falls. Like, but it's one
Yeah.
block only. And then I'll go back to, hey, this is what I need you to hit. I've got another client where I'm like, hey, cool, you get a weight range.
Mm-hmm.
I've got other clients that when I've gone, hey, cool, I want you to hit an RPE 8. They're like, they hit like an RPE 4, like, oh, that was really hard. I'm like, what do you mean that was hard? Like,
That
and then I've
means
got
it
other,
wasn't.
yep. And then I've got other clients that'll be like again, different clients will respond to different inputs in different ways. Like I've had clients in the past who have been like really neurotic,
Mm-hmm.
and I could not give them RPE. Like we've been a comp prep, and I'm like, this is what you have to hit today, and then next week this is what you're going to hit, and you're not going to go either side of these numbers, or pretty much like I'm going to put my boot through your fucking head. It wasn't quite that aggressive, but you
Yeah, it
know,
was.
yeah, it was. But there are times when like if a client really doesn't know how to regulate themselves as like an adult, asking them to like regulate their lifting, they, they,
Mm-hmm.
they don't have a filter to be able to sort of go, well, did that actually move appropriately? Especially when they've got like some serious ego issues around their lifts.
Mm-hmm.
Again, like I've had other clients in the past that have been so fixated on a specific number
Mm-hmm.
where it's like, cool, like you've got an RPE 9 this week. And they're like, oh, well, does that mean I can do this? And it's like, well,
Maybe.
theoretically, yeah, but it might also mean that like you hit half of that.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's actually true for athletes that really overthink on numbers as well and get
Mm,
really hyper fixated on numbers. It's like sometimes I can find if I give someone a load prescription that in theory should be, what they're capable of on that day. And
yeah,
if for whatever reason they're not and things are not feeling good and they can't hit it, it's like, for you or I, it would just be, oh, it's okay. Like I did, I was meant to bench 160 today and I benched 155 and I tried 160, but I just wasn't there today.
mm.
Move on. For some people, they'll try 160 and they'll miss it and they'll be like, fuck, it said I had to do 160 today. I'm the shittest. Why am I getting weaker? This is horrible. I'm going to pull out of my comp.
And I
It's
think
like
this
the end
really
of the world.
comes, yeah, and I think this really comes back to like, I mean, we spoke about this in I think like our first or second episode. We were talking about like time that you have with a coach or time that you have with an athlete, and
Mhm.
that the more you get to learn about them as either a coach or an athlete, you and I can sit there and go, oh, like, I mean, fuck, today I'm like, yeah, I'm annoyed about my bench, but it's like, cool. I literally like I dust myself off, and a couple of minutes later, I go back in and I just go back to work.
Mhm.
And I think when
Exactly.
we can kind of like remove like because again, like at the end of the day, like we know it doesn't really matter if we miss a top set, we can generally go, yeah, like I probably didn't have enough food and I probably was a little bit dehydrated. I probably didn't sleep as well last night or the last couple of nights. I'm stressed with work. Like I've got all these other factors that are sort of influencing me. It probably makes sense that I didn't actually have probably even the audacity to even try attempting that today. But you know what? It's on my program. Fuck it. I'll give it a go. See how we go. But then
Mhm.
it's like if it doesn't come to fruition, it's like, well, cool. Like I know that there are things I can address. Like if I think it's when you kind of go, oh well, I've done everything perfectly and it's still didn't go the way that I wanted to. That's like, that can be a little bit of a harder pill to swallow.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, it's like shit happens.
Yeah. Shit
Like
happens.
it's
Exactly.
just lifting weights, mate. Like
Yeah.
it's
It's not the end of
really
the world.
not the be all and end all. But I think like coming back to like specific clients and what they kind of require, the longer that you have with a client, the easier it is for you to go, I'm not even going to give you RPE because I know you've got absolutely no chance of judging it correctly. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just say, hey, you can squat between 95 and 100 today. If you're feeling really strong, squat 100. If you're feeling a little bit less optimal than ideally, go 95. It's still going to be hard, but it's still going to put you in the ballpark of where we kind of want you for the outcome that we're after.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when, I mean, like, I'm sure that there could be a screening process to go through with clients before they start with you. Because again, you sit down with the client, it's like, oh, well, what are you willing to do to achieve these goals? Oh, mate, I'm willing to do everything I have to. And they give you the 5-star, like, put me in, coach. Like,
It's all mental.
it's all positive attitude. It's just psychological. Fuck, I like that reel.
Yeah, it's my favorite.
Like, it's funny. I get the data and it's like, oh, it's had X amount of minutes worth of watch. I'm like, yeah, that's probably all me.
Yeah, and me. I've watched it so many times.
It's just funny though, because like the more you watch it, you're like, oh, it's like, oh, I can put that audio to like 30 people I know.
Yeah, me being one of them.
Yeah. But yeah, like, so I think, I mean, again, when we sort of talk programming, like, I feel like it's a really vast ocean of context. It's like saying, oh, like, where's the best place to fish?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, fuck, like, what country are you in? Like, what season, like, what time of year is it? Like, there are so many factors that will sort of influence. It's like, when we sort of go, oh, well, let's talk about programming. I feel like if we've got like a specific question, it's like, do you prefer like RPE or percentage? It's like, cool, I prefer this and this is why. And then it's like, well, looking at programming from the perspective of competition versus non-competition clients, it's like that's a very different ballpark.
Yeah.
Again, like it's a very fun and annoying topic to talk about.
Yeah, I find with a lot of, it's a conversation that I have fairly frequently, to be honest, because obviously I coach, obviously Ben, and for anyone listening, I actually am in a position now where a decent amount of my clients are actually also coaches themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have discussions with them quite often about programming, and I have discussions with people in Instagram DMs quite often about coaching and programming. And one of the things that I find happens the most is people are like, I want to learn about programming. I want to learn when to do percentage, when to do RIR, how many times to program this movement, how many times to program this movement. What should I program if this is happening? How can I fix this breakdown? What type of program should I write? Should I do, how many weeks should my blocks be? When should I deload? All of these questions around programming that don't really have a black and white answer. And I think that's the most confusing thing for people is the answer most of the time is, well, it really depends. It depends, and it's very context dependent and situational dependent. And I know a lot of people really struggle with that answer because it's like there's no real like, this is how you write a program. This is how you program for percentages. This is how you program for RPEs. This is how you fix this. This is how you fix that. This is how many times you program this a week, because everyone's going to respond so differently, and everyone requires different stimulus and different, different workarounds and different fixes, and we're all built slightly differently. So,
yeah, and I think this is a an aspect where it's like the answer when people are like, oh, like, how do I do this? It's like, give it a go.
Yeah.
Like, whatever you're thinking is the right way, try it.
Try it. Yeah.
If
And
it
we
works,
are,
so go on.
yeah, you and I are currently building out the content for the Strength Symposium.
Mhm.
And programming and periodization is a topic that we'll be covering for about 60 to 90 odd minutes during the entire day that we're there.
Yep.
And I do want to go into some kind of specifics around programming and periodization during that time. We're not just going to get up there and say, well, guys, it depends.
Thank you. See you all later.
Thanks. For the next half an hour, you guys can go and get lunch. There will be a bunch of content in there in that seminar that'll be really useful takeaways in the booklets. But I think it would be cool if we could actually write up some, like part of the prac that we could do at that seminar would be we'll go through programming and periodization principles that we like to use the way we see it. And then we could do like a little like a prac kind of section towards that as well, where it's like, this person, these are the things, the considerations that we want you to think about. Let's kind of piece something together and then go through it as a group.
Yeah.
I think that could be really fun.
But I think as well, like, it's always really interesting, like, working with other coaches when you go, hey, like, here's a mock client, like, write a program, where coaches kind of will go, hey, I've got all this information about a client and what the program is that they come up with.
Mm.
Like, it can be really interesting to see. And again, like, this is not me trying to throw shade by any stretch of the imagination, but it's like, it's really interesting to see which coaches have never had experience with work outside of the industry. Like, you might get a kid that's like 23, 24. They've worked in a gym since they were 18. They've been training since they were 15. They think they know everything. And they get like a single mum of two who's working full time while looking after her kids. And they do the whole like, oh, well, you've got the same 24 hours in a day that I do, so I don't see why you can't prioritize this. It's like, oh, like, if she could, she would probably slap you right now.
Yeah, well, yeah, I would too. I hate when people say that. That's one of the most annoying fitness Instagram industry sayings of the last decade, I think.
Yeah, or like when you get someone who's only ever worked in gyms and they get someone who works shift work and they're like, oh, well, you need to prioritize your sleep. Like, come on.
Yeah,
like,
no shit, dude.
It's like,
no shit.
But like, I also fucking save lives. So like, I don't know what you expect me to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of the questions that we did get actually was, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was something along the lines of programming considerations for someone with a labor intensive job or shift workers or something along those lines. And I think it's important. I know, for the guys that I have that are shift workers, especially, I don't think I have any laborers, but I do have a couple of shift workers that work in the mines. And we're big on fatigue management. And obviously, like, I help manage that via programming, because I don't think that the correct answer is just telling someone to take it easy.
Make things appropriate.
Yeah, I'm just going to program in a way that it manages their fatigue for them.
Yeah.
And so our programs will change fairly drastically from week to week depending on what they've got going on, and they're just purely based off check-ins. Because I think it's really important to mention, it's something that you and I probably think is common knowledge, but probably isn't, is that training is a stress on the body, on the system. Stress is a stress, fatigue is a stress, work stress, relationship stress, all of these things that we perceive as like stress, it all just falls into the same stress bucket.
Yeah, like the body can't differentiate between training stress and emotional stress.
No, it's just to the body, it's just stress, right? So if you have a shit ton of stuff going on outside of the gym, your bucket is going to be near capacity. If you then just go and do the exact same amount of workload that you do in the gym, all of that training stress and workload, that just then overflows your bucket, and that makes it much harder to progress. And I see it all of the time. So it's just educating people around the fact that, we do need to take outside factors into consideration when we're programming. It's not just like we don't live in a capsule of gym and then nothing else and complete darkness until it's time for gym again.
Some people do, though.
Yeah. Well, dude, like, it's my job and not even I do. Like, there's life outside of the gym. And even the people that say they do they have partners?
Probably not.
Some people don't. But I would say
I don't.
I would say on the planet, there's probably very few people that have zero stress outside of the gym. Some much less than others, but majority of people that have a life outside of the gym, especially in powerlifting, it's not a professional sport. They're not, the NFL players that I watched on the TV today that turn up at the facility at 7 a.m. and have breakfast, train all day, go home, sleep, come back the next day. That's literally their entire life. They probably have a lot less life stress than your average state level powerlifter who works all day, goes home to their family, and has to deal with everything else that's going on in the world outside of the gym.
Agreed.
So we can write the best programs in the world, but if you can't recover from them, they're no good. So I think that's super important. That's my take on it. I'd say you'd probably be the same.
Yeah, very much so.
It's just communication as well. I think a lot of this comes back to communicating between coach and client. If there's no communication, dude, our hands are so tied in what we can do.
Well, I think that really comes back to it is like, as much as it's great for us to be able to communicate, hey, look, this is why I've given you X, Y, and Z. But on the flip side of that, like if a client's like, hey, look, I've got rotating rosters for the next 5 months. Mm-hmm. My training is, there may be days that you program for me that I can't hit that day, and I might need to chop and change the days that I do it. If that's the case, like, how do we need to adapt it? Like, again, give and take, nice balance between communication styles in terms of figuring out where someone is, where they need to go, and how we're going to get there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I had this exact conversation with a fairly new client today.
Yep.
I did his check-in today. My check-ins are fairly in-depth. I have like a really in-depth back and forth conversation with the athlete as I'm programming for them, so I know exactly what's going on. And he mentioned that he didn't get many sessions done last week because he had stitches and couldn't do a lot of the stuff. And I was like, and he's pretty new, so this was just kind of like an educational opportunity. Mm-hmm. And I was like, dude, you like when stuff like that happens, you just reach out and tell me. Say to me, hey man, I've got stitches, wherever. I'm going to find it hard to do these certain things. And then that gives me the opportunity then to change your program to suit you for the week so that you're not just not doing something. I can change it to stuff that you can do so that we're still making progress. But if I don't know that you have stitches, I can't do that for you.
Exactly. And that's, again, I think coming back to the whole equal and balanced communication.
Yeah. Very much so. Yeah. One of the other questions that we had was thoughts on conjugate and why is conjugate the best?
Do you want to start this one?
No, I want you to. Okay, I'll start. Look, there's parts of conjugate that I actually don't mind.
Mhm.
Again, I don't know a whole bunch about it, um, other than my personal experience in doing it.
Mhm.
I've never had a coach like that had a conjugate coach that's run me through it or anything like that. It was just kind of like me doing it myself. Um, the aspects, the part that I like about it though isn't. I like that they do like a heavy and then a
Speed
lighter
week.
exposure. And I know that they use it as speed work, and um, I don't so much like it for the speed work because I don't think I subscribe so much to just like speed being as big a factor in a good lift as maybe what other people do. I
Mm.
think that technique and strength and just like moving something properly is probably a better way of a better thing to shoot for than trying to move it as quickly as possible. But I do like the aspect that of doing a lighter exposure with fewer reps but more sets, just
Mhm.
from a exposure to the movement standpoint and just getting better at doing the thing.
Yeah.
So that's something that I actually do use in my programming. Is say um, if I want to do like a third, say I'm doing three bench exposures throughout the week, I might do like a heavy bench or like a heavier bench variation, and then I might do like a pause bench or a slower centric bench or something like that. And then I might do for a third bench, I might do something like 6 to 8 sets of 2 reps at like 75 to 80% of the heavy day,
Mhm.
just for like pure, let's just get heaps of reps in.
Yeah.
Set up every time, getting it's more exposure to setting up, getting in position, getting it all right.
Mm.
I don't mind that aspect of it. I don't love much else about it, to be honest.
Yeah.
What about you?
I like the accommodating resistance component of it. Um, Again, like being very spoiled at my gym, having a lot of the machines that kind of, you can change which aspect of the lift they are going to be favorable or more challenging. And I think that's been a really nice way to include it into my accessories.
Mm-hmm.
I've not done a huge amount in terms of like really heavy banded work for anything other than really my deadlift.
Mm-hmm.
I've done some banded deadlift work for a while. I've done a little bit of like benching with chains and that sort of stuff. And to be honest, like I quite enjoy it,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think I probably had, like, similar to you, I don't think I probably had enough genuine exposure to it to kind of go, yeah, okay, well, like this is going to be really good. But I would also look at it from the perspective of like a lot of the real, like I know obviously like if you talk to anyone who, well, like even watching interviews with the guys from West Side, and they've like adapted it to be more friendly to raw lifters. I think
Mm-hmm.
looking at it when it first kind of like came about, it was used heavily for guys that competed in gear. Um, doing like reverse banded box squats. It's like, what real application does that have to a raw lifter? Like, probably not a whole lot, because when you look at someone who's competing in a suit with wraps on, like they're pretty well enforced in that bottom position
Mm-hmm.
because of the nature of like what the suit and everything's going to do. Um, but I think, like, even if I look at where my lifts currently are, like my bench, like my lockout gets hard pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And there, obviously, like you could sit there and go, oh well, it's probably because you're losing a bit of scapular stability as you're pressing off the chest. It's like, yeah, that's probably a degree of it. But at the same time, like, what are some things I can do to help improve my ability to actually keep pressing through my lockout? Like, is a block press going to be suitable for someone like me? I would say yes, because I've run that as a part of my program before, and it had paid off beautifully.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just sort of really coming down to the whole, again, like individualize it, trial it,
Yeah.
see if it works. Like I've done, some benching with chains before, and I really like this.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, because I see the argument of, say, let's take a block press, for example, and people saying, well, a block press isn't a full range bench, so you're losing out on the bottom range of the bench press.
mhm.
So essentially, what you're doing this for is triceps, and there's just way better tricep exercises. And I agree, there is way better tricep exercises, but I also think there's huge merit in, like you said, learning to drive through that lockout range of the bench. Learning how to grind essentially, or exposing yourself to heavier loads through that range, so that when it does get grindy, you can actually finish the rep.
Like I've run a bench peak before where on my main bench day it was a top single, and then I think it was like 2 sets of 2 afterwards or something like that. And then my secondary day was 3x3 block press at what I hit my top single at. And my God, did I get fucking strong in that little trial of it, to the point where if I'm sitting there going, yep, I'm going to be really amping up the intensity on my bench, and I'm going to be pushing some heavy weight, I know as a constant, it's like, cool, I'm going to have block press in my program, because I know that supports my, as a really nice carryover movement for my raw bench to my chest, where I'm like, yep, I know I'm going to be strong off my chest here, because where I tend to slow down a little bit in my bench press is pretty much where I have to start pressing from off my chest with the block.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like, I know people come back to the whole like, oh yeah, but it's because you can't control your scapula properly in the ranges that you're not doing in with the block on. It's like, yeah, but like if I can also get myself to a point where I can get used to extending my elbows with a lot more intensity off that position and build capacity there, like while I also address the scapular stability work in my main bench, it's like I'm now also addressing another area that's going to help then feed into that bench improvement.
Yeah, you can do both.
Yeah.
Why can't we have both? Yeah, look, and same thing with my bench. I did that two blocks where I was using the slingshot.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that I found helped really well, as you know, you and I had a ton of discussions about, one of my biggest issues with my bench was losing my upper back.
Yeah.
Right? And that was just making it almost impossible for me to have any decent progressions on my bench. So what I found with the slingshot was, one, because there was more load, and two, because of the nature of the slingshot being, it's like if you lose position even slightly, that thing's just like flinging you in all directions.
Yeah.
Right? So it made me stay so tight in that bottom position when the slingshot was loaded, because if I didn't, it was going to end really badly, and it did a couple of times. So then when I took the slingshot off, I found that I had way more control over my upper back and my scaps, and I was able to hold position way better, which was a huge reason why my bench was looking so much better recently than it ever has.
I think this is like another thing to sort of talk about at the moment is, like, we could sit there and go, well, if you're losing scapular position, if you're losing upper back position, these are the drills that you need to do. But again, this is half the fun of programming and all that sort of shit. Someone may do those exercises and go, it's just not clicking. And you might go, hey, cool, well, instead of doing that, we're going to give you a really obscure movement that technically probably doesn't have the same principles, but for some reason it just clicks for them. They go, oh, I now understand what it feels like to have tension in my upper back. So now when I go and do it here, I understand the sensation and I can correlate the two better. Like for me, you know, we were sort of talking about like when you were saying you're taking SBD out of your program, and I was like, I was fortunate enough I got to do that during lockdowns.
Mm-hmm.
One of the exercises that I started doing a lot of during lockdowns was Z press.
Yep.
Both with a barbell and with dumbbells, and sort of going from here and being able to press up overhead and understanding, okay, I can allow my scapula to move a little bit more freely. And the amount of engagement I got in my upper back, I'm like, oh, like this is what upper back tension feels like.
Yeah.
And then it was like, cool, like I'm going to do some like incline rows. I'm like, this is what it feels like. So when I look at movements I'm going to do before a heavy bench session, I know I'm always going to do a few priming sets of like, cool, I'm going to go do some incline dumbbell rows. I'm going to go do some dumbbell Z press. I'm going to get my upper back firing really crazy to bring that sensation to a higher level of consciousness, so that when I'm like, cool, I'm under a bar here, I'm coming down, that feeling of going, yes, I have my upper back engaged, but I don't have to bastardize scaps back and down, scaps back and down, scaps back and down.
Yeah. I do want to address one more thing about conjugate, because it just came to mind as you were talking about that, is a huge argument, I guess, the conjugate crowd would make, and I know this for a fact because I've had this conversation with, there's a whole crew that does conjugate at the gym that I coach out of.
When I come up, I'll fight them.
We'll tag team them. One of them's going to be at the seminar, so he's the ringleader. We'll tie him up.
We're going to bully him so much.
Off the ledge.
Amazing.
Hey?
We're going to bully him so much.
Absolutely. I'm a big bully advocate.
We're just going to like gear the seminar around being like, this is why conjugate's shit. Just a shit stir.
Yeah, so one of the their biggest, I guess, like selling cards is it's not boring. Right? Like we get to do lots of different things, which is true. And I agree that after a certain point, doing endless amounts of squat, bench, and deadlift gets fucking boring as hell, right? Like there's only so much squatting and benching and deadlifting that you can just do on repeat before it's like, okay, I kind of need to do something else now just to keep this interesting. My counter argument to that would be, you shouldn't be doing squat, bench, and deadlift all year round anyway. Let's just do some movement variability. Let's periodize your programming. Let's make it interesting. Let's train some other qualities, and then you get the best of both worlds.
Because to sort of continue on from your point, if someone's going to sit there and go, oh well, I like to do something different all the time, it's like, cool, go do CrossFit.
Yeah, it's not so much. Oh man, I would never say that to someone. That's so mean.
That's quite funny.
Yeah, but I think you can do that. You can have movement variability, and I think that you should, because it keeps training interesting.
Well, shit, we talk heaps about movement variability.
Yeah, it's one of the things that we talk about the most, I would say.
Yeah, but I think it's like, and this is obviously like, I know I shit on CrossFit a lot, but it's kind of like random generated stuff. At least with conjugate, it would probably be like, hey, look, we're going to run this block and we're going to do heavy safety bar good mornings as our main hinge movement, and we're going to have speed or banded RDLs at 70% for doubles. Like that would, I'm like, yeah, cool. Like that would probably make sense. And then the following block, it might be something like, oh well, we're going to do like a seated good morning, or whatever the thought process and the progressions are. Like again, I don't want to shit on it entirely. I think the fact that we were both like, hey, look, we probably don't know enough about it to really shit on it too heavily. But I think like the movement variability, I think, is going to be key. But I think that also just comes down to like periodizing well.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. That's the point I was getting at as well. But I do want to probably just end it on saying, as well, is if that's what you like to do, then that's what you should do, right? Because at the end of the day, the best program is the one that you're going to stick to and follow and do.
Yeah.
And if that's conjugate, if that's CrossFit, if that's, running up sandhills, whatever it is, if you can commit to it and actually do it long term, that's what's going to make progress for you.
Yeah.
And you probably shouldn't try and do anything else because it's not going to work if you can't do it. One of the other topics that we got asked to cover was judging standards, and is judging potentially political, and or if not, why is it so inconsistent, or why can it be so inconsistent?
Do you want me to kick this one off?
Yeah, go for it.
So, again, I'm going to talk about sort of like my upbringing in powerlifting to kind of preface my answer.
Mm-hmm.
All of the comps that I pretty much did in the first few years were all done at PTC HQ. Mm-hmm. All done through GPC when GPC was
big.
Mm-hmm. The one thing I always loved was watching one of the guys that trained there, Jesse. So the guy who owns the gym, Marcos, it's his son, Jesse. He would be judging when his mum was squatting. And my favorite thing was always like, cool, he gave her reds.
Mm-hmm.
This was always the thing I would look at and go, they always have, for the most part, a pretty good level of judging.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like. There are times when I'm like, yeah, there may be some lifts passed because they go, oh well, we like this person, we want them to succeed. Prime example, my 160 bench. But then there's been other times as well when I'm like, cool, like they're judging their training partners and their best friends, and they're just like, no, like it wasn't deep enough. Like, sorry, mate, like I'm not going to pass it. Like, I think this is always going to really boil down to like what people really want to see come from the sport. And when we really look at the rule book, most of the time, like when it comes to something, say like squats, it literally says in the rule books, it's like if there's any doubt, or if you're not 100% sure it was high, like favor has to go in the lifter.
Yeah.
So I think if we take that into really into context, like shit, there may be times when your vision gets impaired a little bit from a spotter being in the way. Mm-hmm. And it's like, cool, like you can have a kind of a look at the rough angle of where the femur ends up, and like that looks like it could have been close. That looks like it could have been high. I'm not really sure. Technically, they have to give them a white light.
Mm-hmm.
So I think when we do look at standards of judging, it kind of has to then boil down to like, one, what does the judge actually want from the comp today? Like if someone's attempting a world record, I think it's a little bit different as like what should be required from a judge in terms of like, if you can't see, like you need to get into a position where you can see. Obviously, first and foremost, like safety of the lifter has to be paramount. So I think that kind of makes things challenging. But again, I come back to Scott from Queensland. You know, you'd watch him to judge at big dogs, and he would be sprawled on the fucking ground like Spider-Man trying to get a vantage point to be able to go, if I'm going to give, a 460 kilo squat white lights, I want to make sure that it deserves white lights. And if it doesn't, I'm going to give you reds. But judging is hard. Like as much as we have objective requirements, it's still subjectively informed by the person that's watching it.
Yeah, there's a human element to it, right? And there always will be. And, that's the same as every single sport on the planet.
Yeah, like you look at the refs for like the Super Bowl, you look at refs from NBA, like we can sit there and go, oh, well, there's a lot of things that we can see pretty clearly, but there are going to be times when like when it comes down to the crunch where you go, fuck, there is going to be a human element where there's potential for error. You
Yeah.
know, I know we
And
send videos to each other all the time and we're like, this is high as fuck. Where was the fucking pause? Like,
mhm.
there are some feds and some judging, which I'm like, that surely takes the piss. Like, I've seen videos of people when they're benching where the bar hasn't even touched their chest yet and they have gotten a press call.
I've seen that too.
And I'm like that to me, I'm just like, cool, that person just shouldn't be judging.
Yeah, that's right, and they shouldn't. But there's there's extenuating circumstances like that, and like your bench with the butt and stuff. That's just like clearly that's a bad call. But then there's the generally when it's a like a bad call in air quotes, it's very borderline. It could go either way, and um, there's always a human element to it, and whatever side of the fence you sit on is going to determine how you feel about the call, I guess, as well.
Yeah.
If it's someone that you like, you'll be like, oh no, that was right on the line, that was perfect. The exact same lift of maybe someone that you're not so fond of, you'll be like, oh, that was high, why'd they get whites? I think that how we feel about things definitely can skew the way we see them. And judging shouldn't be like that, but sometimes it is because we're all human. And as well, on the other side of that is if you're a spectator or a coach or another athlete, or you're sitting at home watching, you're sitting in the crowd watching, you're sitting, on the sidelines watching, you don't have the pressure of having to be the one to make the call in the moment. So it's much easier to sit back and say that was high or that was good, that shouldn't have got reds, than being actually the person on the hot seat making the call in the moment with no replays.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to make mistakes, and I think sometimes you just kind of have to take the good with the bad. And my advice, if you're a lifter, is just don't leave any doubt in the eyes of the judges, and you'll be fine.
One thing I'm going to add to that. Sorry, go on. Are you going?
And if you're a lifter, just try not to worry about what other lifters are doing. Just worry about yourself. Go for it.
Yeah, I think sort of like continuing on from the point you're making, like you're not the one in the hot seat having to make those decisions. And if you're really that upset with the level of judging, go become a judge. Put yourself in that position and then see how you go when you have to deal with people cracking the shits at you. If they think you made a poor call, like I've said this to you quite often, I would love to get more involved into reffing because I think I would be brutally fair across the board. I feel like I would be pretty unforgiving, but I feel like I would do that across the board with everyone.
Yeah.
Like my favorite, like there are certain refs that like when I've gone to comps, I'm like, oh, like I know that this person's reffing. It's like, cool. I know that it's going to be pretty rough out there today. But then like the moment that like you get a white light from them, it's like, oh, I know I'm doing good.
Yeah. And if there is federations or meet directors or comps at certain gyms that are, playing favorites or being political with it, I really don't think it'll take long before people catch on to that, and that just, that federation dies, or, that meet director doesn't get anyone signing up to the comps anymore.
Yeah.
Stuff like that kind of has a way of auto-regulating itself.
Yeah, it's all going to come out in the wash eventually.
Yeah. It does suck in the meantime, though, if that kind of stuff is happening. But yeah, I think there's ways around it. Can't remember many more questions. I did put that photo in there, but sorry, man. Today's been a technical difficulty day.
It's all good, man. I'm not going to be one to sit here and have a go at you for not being tech savvy enough when I'm like, technology.
Oh, I did put it in there. I think it was the lack of coffee. I'm going to blame the lack of coffee. It mustn't have saved or something. But
Oh well.
anyway, that's all the questions that I can remember for today. So maybe we should just end it there,
Cool.
and we'll come back next week. Do you want to do deadlifts next week?
I really do.
Okay, cool.
Obviously, like, I
Let's-
think we're gonna. I think we'll have like obviously like a conventional part and a sumo component of it.
Mhm.
Whereas I think obviously like when we've spoken squats or spoken bench, it's been a little bit more like, oh well, like we kind of have like a comp version, we kind of have a non-comp version. I
Mhm.
think this one will be a little bit more interesting because they're both allowed in powerlifting.
Yep.
But yeah, I think we'll have a bit of fun with deadlifts next week.
Cool. Me too. And I did just want to mention before we end it, again about the Strength Symposium seminar that Ben and I are running up here at Apex Strength in Thornton on the 20th of April,
Yep.
Saturday, the 20th of April, from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. If you can come along, I highly recommend that you do so. We're going to be covering programming and periodization, principles of the squat, bench, and deadlift. We have a nutrition special guest, the sports nutritionist. It will be talking all things fueling strength athletes. And there'll be theory and practical components to the day. We do have a limited amount of early bird tickets still available. I have a link in my bio. We have the link in the Bars Loaded bio. Em has a link in her bio. And if you know Ben and you would rather deal with Ben, you can message Ben and he will send you the link to sign up to buy tickets to come along. Ben, do you have anything to add to that?
Maybe in next week's episode, but for now, I think you've covered everything beautifully.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think we might have something extra to add next week. We'll have a chat off air. Just for those of you who do listen, we might try and throw in something a little bit spicy for you guys.
Beautiful.
We'll have a chat.
Yeah, I definitely want as many people to come along as possible. So if you have any questions about it, if you're on the fence and you're not sure if it's going to be suitable for you or if you'll learn anything or if any questions at all, just shoot one of us a message. We'd love to answer any questions that you have about it.
Honestly, like it really doesn't matter how simple or like what kind of question you think it might be. Like we will be open to any question. So yeah, if you've got any questions, ask us. We don't bite. Well, not hard anyway. So I mean, unless you ask really, really nicely. But yeah. Ask the question and we'll happily provide a very in-depth answer.
Or a short answer, whatever you prefer.
Yes.
All right, mate. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for putting up with me and my technical issues.
It's the things I do for you, mate. Have a good week.
You too, Simon.